Alright, let's go ahead and get started. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. Well, you guys not getting so much glare off of that. Everything's going with you. Hopefully good start to a good weekend. Assuming you're watching this live. If you're not watching it live, then good day. Or good night. Good evening? Good morning. Wherever you are. Good you just insert the rest. How are you guys doing? And let's talk about the week. Week went all right for me. Hopefully your week was all right. Another one in the bucket. Another foot closer to the grave. Another week of work come and gone, and another week of D&D, or weekend of D&D, I should say, right smack in the middle of it. So last week we did not have our usual Sunday game. That's a game in which I am a player. That campaign, our DM was on call, so didn't want to really jump into the campaign, so we usually don't play when he's on call. So but we did meet up and did some like board games and card games and stuff, and I think that's actually really, really important. I think that's a thing that's overlooked a lot when it comes to the success of running an ongoing D&D game, is to meet up and continue to meet up, even if not everybody's going to be there, even if it doesn't make sense to play D&D. So, for example, in the Friday game I'm running, in not this next week, but I think the week after, we're going to be missing 2 of our players, so we're going to be down 50% of the PCs. And my thoughts were, well, we could play technically, but probably not. But it is a good idea for us to get together and maybe do like a one-shot, or do board games or card games or something like that. So that way, there's this thing that keeps, like, unconscious thing that persists in everybody's mind, and all your players' mind, everybody in the group's mind, that's like, oh, this is the time in which I play D&D. And so that time is like earmarked, so they don't fill it with other things. And then when people start filling that time period, that time space consistently with other commitments, because that's what happens, is that you have a person miss a session, and then a few people miss a session in a row, then the holidays, and then before you know it, your D&D group kind of falls apart. So I think it's important to just kind of keep playing. So that's what we did on Sunday, and a lot of fun. Got to pull out some of the old games I haven't played here in a little bit, and did that with some friends. So always fun. Let's see. Friday ran the campaign. Ran it last night. Went well. It was going to be a weird session. It was a weird session because it's right at the cusp of kind of starting a new adventure, so they've kind of had that inciting incident, but there's a lot of just talkies that I'm not sure everybody was prepared for. I know one of my players was not feeling well, and so they kind of sat back in the role play, because there was a lot of that. It was a lot of just kind of talking to NPCs. They had to talk to like 6 or 7 NPCs. They're this ad hoc council, kind of ensuring that the NPCs didn't just murder a bunch of people, and then kind of co-opting them into checking out what happened there and what's going on with the new adventure. So yeah, I mean, lots of fun. A little bit of a slower session just because no combat, so just a little bit of exploration, a little bit of walking around, a lot of talking. And it's also a good time to have that sort of like downtime, not a lot going on session. They got to sell some stuff back in town. They got to we have a new PC who's kind of entering the party, so an opportunity to sit down and kind of talk to them and learn a little bit about them as they get ready to continue back and gather up all their gear after the festival and head back to the scene of the quote-unquote crime. See if they can pick up any clues. Unfortunately, they went right back into how I run sort of like the overland hex map, hex scrawl kind of stuff, and immediately started racking up points of exhaustion just off of some really bad D4 rolls. I've got a whole video about that if you want to know about that system. Essentially, as you move through hexes, the DC for being able to continue on in the day stacks up. I do that instead of tracking like time of walking. I just think it's a little bit more fun. You roll some more dice, and keeps things fresh. It keeps things a little bit higgledy-piggledy, like you're not quite sure what things are going to be, because the DC kind of always goes up somewhat randomly because you're rolling dice to do that. And then once you start failing saves, you start getting levels of exhaustion. I use the 2014 exhaustion rules for D&D instead of the 2024 ones because I prefer the statuses rather than the just floating negative modifiers, which does not feel very similar to how 5e was originally designed. So yeah, that was it. So, but now they know where they're going. They know what they're gonna do, because I knew in this past session, it's like there was a lot of questions. Like, I don't know. They have some choices about people they can go and follow up with, people they can talk to, and that sort of stuff. So I wasn't quite sure exactly who they were gonna kind of go after. So, but now I know for certain, which is good. And they are heading in that direction. Why is it doing this? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. What? Oh, what in the heck is going on here? One moment, please. Technical difficulties. I think everything looks fine on your side, but on my side, things are weird. Okay. Does this correct it? I think this corrects it. Gonna do it. I believe so. Holding. Holding. One moment, please. Just one moment, please. Working on it. Alright, I think that's it. I think we got it. Yeah, I think we got it. Makes sense. Sorry, now YouTube being weird. Yeah, I think... Okay, I think we're back. Does everything look correct? Everything looks correct to me. Which means it may or may not be correct. Who knows? Anyhow. We'll sally forth. Don't call me Sally. What was I saying? Oh, that was all Friday D&D. So yeah, it was a session where I didn't know what they were going to do. They had a couple different options, so it was a little bit more difficult to prep. Usually one of the things that's really important for me in prep, and I think is a good just rule of thumb for prep, is try to figure out what the players are going to do at the start of next session. Because you really only get to plan as sort of a lazy dungeon master, kind of not. Is that you really only get to plan the first session of D&D or whatever TTRPG you're going to play, because after that first encounter of the session, because after that first scene or encounter or whatever, the players could do whatever they're going to do. So you really only have the option to plan that first one. So that's why it's really nice to know if you can get them to commit to a course of action or what they're going to do for the start of the next session. That gives you a very specific thing to start prepping towards. And so now I know where they're going. They're going to go see Wise Halamith, the Hermit on the Mountain. I think that is their best bet to learn about what's going on with these Vegapygmies. Praised Vegapygmies. So that's their idea. Of course, they're going to look at the scene of crime first. The scene of a fight, I guess. It's not really crime. I mean, and they did a couple murders. They did a trio of murders, if you will, a serial of murders. But yeah, so good to plan. It's gonna be easy to prep for this next one because I know exactly where they're going. I've already. One moment. Oh, I hate that when you're gonna sneeze and then suddenly it goes away. I know exactly where they're headed, so that's makes it very easy to prep for. I've already rolled for the DCs as they're moving through, and the random encounters they might come across, or when they will appear, I should say, not the actual encounters yet. That'll have to figure out. Which is another sort of point about random encounters and using it, is that you don't have to roll the random encounters at the table. You can roll them beforehand, and I think that's easier than it frees up a lot of time at the table if you're like, oh, I know when they make their 7th move, which, counting encounter time, exploration time, and they get to that 7th slice of the clock, that this is that they're going to run across a wandering monster encounter, and then have it be like, well, I don't know specifically where you're going to be because of the sort of trajectory and where they're at, but I know specifically, like, these are the maybe 3 different encounters they might come across. Rather than prepping big random encounter charts and taking them with you, it's like you can just kind of do all that stuff beforehand. Your players won't really care that much one way or the other, honestly. Or at least that's been my experience, that they don't care that much. It's easy for me because I don't have to think about it. I still get to use the benefits of the roll tables without the slowdown that it does in the middle of the game, if that makes sense. But yeah, we're going to play tomorrow. We have freshly leveled up characters, and probably going to be quite a bit of combat this next session that I'm playing in. So we'll see. Going down to help out some tridents. That's our maritime campaign where we spend 99% of the time not on our ship but actually underwater, because it's just the turn that the campaign's taken and dealing with that. But that will be fun. It is fun to play a fully underwater campaign. It's also very difficult, I think, specifically for our dungeon master. Be like, having to deal with 3D fights all the time, and it being the ocean, so they're not always super interesting because there's just a bunch of water, is I think been a challenge for him. Something he struggles with to try to like keep it fresh and interesting. Not in a bad way. I don't think he's doing a bad job. I think that's just the nature of the beast rather than any sort of perceived failing on his part. But today, let's get back to our actual topic for today. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, I thought we were going to have time to talk about last time, but we kind of ran out of time. That's not surprising. It seems to be just how this goes. But I want to talk about Hex Dungeon design, and I'll go ahead and flip it over. So this is actually one of my favorite ways to come up with adventures for D&D. It's not my only way, and there should never be just one way that you use to like build adventures, one method, if you will, to build adventures or dungeons, because that will get stale really quickly. And I think that is generally what's considered. Here we go. That's generally considered one of the biggest cons to using something like the 5-room dungeon method to create prep sessions for D&D and other games, is that it's such a small amount of content because you're kind of prepping only enough content per session. So by the time you start getting into sessions 3, 4 plus like that, if you keep doing that same method, it becomes very clear what the methodology is because it's so small and so quickly repeated. So I like to have a few different ones that I use, but this is one of my favorite ones. This is the Hex Dungeon Adventure Design. I usually just call it Hex Dungeon, but I use it for not dungeons too. It's just generally when I first came up with it, I was like, oh, this is designed for dungeons. And then the more I messed around with it, because of the way that I use like node maps instead of just straight up like grid maps for the most part, when I'm building out a dungeon or something like that, it's like, oh well, actually we can just take a node map, and then when you're using a node map, there's no difference between a point crawl and a dungeon or an urban point crawl. So you can throw it in the wilderness. It's useful in cities. If you want to do a city adventure, it's useful if you want to do a straightforward dungeon adventure. So it's useful for all of those. So I want to go over it today because it's one of my favorites. I use it quite a bit, and none of the dungeons quite feel the same. I think they feel a little samey to me just because I'm very familiar with the format because I made it and I use it a lot. But I don't think that my players ever feel like they're very similar. The nice thing about the Hex Dungeon design is, and we'll just go down the points here. It is my go-to framework for designing an adventure. So it's probably the one that I use. Well, not probably. It is the one that I use the most, for sure. But I do use other ones because you don't want it to get super stale. It's also one of those things where I'm always looking for a new way. So I'm always looking for different sort of adventure design methods out there and using those and trying those out. So, but this is sort of my gold standard, my go-to. It does the things I want because I made it myself, so of course it does. It should do the things I want. That's why I made it. So hopefully you guys will find it a little bit helpful as well. And you can use this whole cloth or pull what you need out of it and take what you want and leave the rest. So again, it's not my only style. You do have to mix things up to keep it from going stale. It is a helpful thing to do. So that means sometimes you go and grab dungeons that other people have made. Sometimes you go get adventures that other people have made. Use published adventures, so that way it's not even like your stuff, which can help to mix things up a little bit. So what is a Hex Dungeon? I'm just gonna go ahead and make that. Boop, boop. So a Hex Dungeon is just basically a simple node-based layout for creating digestible dungeons and other adventures. It consists of a start, basically 7 rooms or nodes, dungeon chambers, whatever, 7 locations depending on the scale that you're working in, and then there's a finish, sort of the end of it. So I'll use a lot of dungeon terminology as we're going through this, but the hex design does work equally well if you're doing non-dungeon adventures, where each dungeon, room, or chamber is a distinct encounter or location or scene that you create, that you're throwing into the adventure. Then I just kind of gave the layout. Hopefully this works. I tried to... I don't have like a nice tablet to scribble things on to make... not that my art is fantastic anyways, but to give you just sort of a lookout. But it is essentially a hex shape, so you have 2 rooms at the top, 3 rooms in the middle, and then 2 rooms at the bottom, so you just kind of have that clear hexagon shape with a point right in the middle. Then you have your start at the top and your finish at the bottom, and that's it. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why I like this design. Go ahead and... No, I did not come back in here and make headings for stuff. That was very silly of me. Anyways. So why Hex Dungeons are sort of my favorite adventure design. The scope. The scope I really like. My sweet spot for adventures is about 2 to 3 sessions in length. That's what I think feels right to me, especially when I'm running them. Because it's long enough that there's some meat to chew on for the player, so it's not like a 5-room dungeon or a 1-session thing, or it's something that's going to be over in like 3 hours. And they're going to move on, and it'll be like a bump in the road, and they'll forget about it. But it's also not a really, really long dungeon, like certainly not any kind of mega dungeon. So I like it because one of the things I run into if you run longer dungeons is that sometimes, and I've been guilty of this as a player as well. Get into a dungeon, you've been in a dungeon for a few sessions, and you go, why do we come in here again? And then you start having to look through. At least I have to start looking through my notes. Why did we come in here again? Why are we fighting these goblins? Oh right, we're looking for a hostage. That's right, from the town person. Yes, the smith's son or whoever it is. Right. So that way they'll give us maybe a discount on some plate armor or something like that. Whatever the cost is. But it is... If you have longer adventures, you can lose some of the focus. The players will get sidetracked, because even at your best, if you're playing a weekly game, you start doing things that go like 4 sessions on. You're talking about at least a month of time is happening in the real world. Obviously not in game time, but in the real world, which means a lot of stuff happens in a month, and your players are going to forget stuff. I do. You as the DM or game master will also probably forget things. So it's really helpful to keep a nice short scope. That's why I like it. It's that 2 to 3 sessions is just long enough that they're going to remember what they're doing, not too long that it's going to overstay its welcome. It's great. It's my preferred, and that's why it's in there. My justification, I guess. I also like that the framework is useful beyond dungeons. It's easy to create urban and wilderness adventures. I've done both of these as sort of like mini point crawl adventures. It's useful for framing mysteries and laying out clues. If you want to do expeditions, you can do that, and then instead of passageways or the crawl aspect of something like a point crawl becomes like, oh, which trail are you taking? Which can be really helpful if you're wanting to do like an expedition. It even works for stuff like if you want to do a social masquerade party and be like, okay, the setting, instead of being in a dungeon, the session is like a ballroom, this masquerade ballroom. And here are the different encounters that are going to happen in and around the main ballroom, as well as maybe some, like the balcony outside, or the gardens, and what other things you might put in there, the cloakroom, or coat check, etc. The undercroft, all that fun stuff. Yeah, they're also just very easy to run. Most of the adventures can be formatted to about one sheet layout with a map, the story, and the location key. Then you just kind of need to grab your monster manual or stat blocks, and you're pretty much good to go. And talking a little bit about my suggested layout. I'll be honest that I think this is the best layout. I am usually, as a Dungeon Master, too lazy to actually use it. I have used it before. I do think this is the best layout. I just very rarely actually end up doing it. It's one of those things where it's late enough, is like if I was thinking about potentially publishing it, this would be how I would set it up, just so people would have it. So you have that front page one, so it's just a quick bifold kind of setup. You have your title, your setup, and your start and finish stuff on the front page with the story beats. On the interior spread, you have your key location descriptions with everything, all your rooms and stuff like that. And then I put usually the map on the back. I know a lot of people might be like, I would put the map on the front. Like, yeah, but I feel like, because I don't run with the screen, so that's different. So if I had it in the front, it would always be kind of facing, it would always be facing the players. And a very easy way for them to read and look at. So I try not to do that. So usually I put that kind of stuff on the back, where I can just quickly flip it over if I need to look at it. Any images or stuff like that, the stat blocks, I'm going to put that stuff in there. That can all kind of go on that back fold. And the last thing that I really like about sort of the situation with this specific adventure design is that just by the way it's set up, just using that hex framework, where as you can kind of see here, how all these little different paths in between these rooms, that are the arrows, it naturally creates a lot of dungeon loops, a lot of looping in the dungeon. So it makes this very natural kind of circular. If you just kind of keep following past, you will eventually see everything, unless there's a secret door. Stuff like that. But it does kind of naturally do it without me having to consciously think about making sure to put loops and stuff like that in my dungeons or adventures. Which just makes them a little bit more rich, and means that there's never one true, like, you're never going to end up with a linear path running through it. I mean, I guess technically you could end up with one long snake of a dungeon. The likelihood of that is astronomically low. It's statistically so low as to be functionally nothing. That you would only roll a linear path through the dungeon, through the nodes. Incredibly unlikely. Could happen. The likelihood again is almost nothing. All right, so how do we create a key one of these hex dungeons? A key dungeon, a hex dungeon. Wait, hey. So I feel like what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use some of my own stuff as well. What did I do with it? So I'll outline some of it a little bit. I don't want to take up too much time doing it. Famous last words. But I've got my handy dandy GM binder folder. It's got lots of little tables in me that are in here that are helpful for me for running games that I'm going to use for this, except I don't think I have a random verse in here, do I? I do not. I don't have my random chain verse in here. I do not. Well, that would be an important one for me to have. So that one I will have to go grab because I don't in here. It used to be in here, and then I think I pulled it out. Actually, I think it's in my Dungeon Master 2 binder. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not even there yet. So let's not worry about that quite yet. You know, I say that I'm not going to worry about it, but I just keep doing the thing. Craig, got me. Yeah, there's my dungeon. We went over this dungeon creation method. That a totally different way to build a dungeon. A lot more in depth. This is a lot more pages. But what I do want to grab out of here, I need is my random dungeon chamber types of chambers table. Is somewhere in here. Someone? Anyone? What's dungeon dressing? It's in here. Encounters. Dungeon chamber contents. We're getting closer. Ah, there we go. Because this is not formatted very well, so the table is split between 2 pages. Smart me. Smart. Great layout. See, nothing wrong with this at all. Part of the problem. Okay, so we're gonna do it as we go along, just so we have an idea. So I've got a little thing down here at the bottom, so we can have our outline. All right, so let's just jump into it. This is the whole of creating this thing. So it's about a page's worth of information. Now, some of that's abstracted, right? We're not including all the tables there, because I want you to be able to use whatever tables you like to do things like stock dungeons and come up with all that stuff. Everybody kind of has their own resources. I don't need to reinvent the wheel there. I have my own preferred resources. I'm sure if you're a dungeon master of some tenure, you probably have those as well. If not, oh boy howdy, there's a lot out there. So a quick old Google search will do ya. You'll find more than you could ever want or need to use. We'll jump in there. And again, this will take a little bit longer because I'm going to roll for some of this stuff. But that's... This is what I find this framework is really great for is if I have like a lazy Sunday afternoon or something like that, I'll sit down with a notepad, because usually I handwrite these out to just draw the node map and all that stuff. So usually I'll just handwrite it out on nice sort of like notepad. Knock one of these guys out pretty quickly. Sometimes I'll do 2. Sometimes they're for specific uses. Sometimes they're just for fun. Just to kind of have a dungeon in the back pocket or an adventure in the back pocket, just in case I ever need it in the future. And it is a situation where it's just like, just the act of working on this stuff and doing it. That helps give you ideas, keeps you sharp as a dungeon master. All right, let's jump in though. So the first thing, of course, whenever we're doing one of these things, is we would make an idea kernel. What is the one thing that we want to kind of focus this adventure around? Our one point of inspiration. You can build out the rest of the adventure. You know, it's a monster, some sort of item or object, a puzzle, a campaign plot point, a specific NPC, whatever it is. What's the cool moment that you have in your head, and build the adventure to get to that point. That's a really good just dungeon adventure thing. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, I want to have, let's say I wanted to have no, I don't want to use that for this example, but say if you wanted to have an undead encounter in water, so like the zombies or whatever, or skeletons or whatever, are like under the water, and you want that to be sort of the encounter where they're like grabbing people and dragging them underwater. Like, oh, that seems like really cool, so I'd be like, all right, that doesn't seem like necessarily a climax of an adventure, so maybe that's something I just kind of toss in the middle of the adventure. Okay, why would they need to cross this water? What is this water? Why do they need to cross it at all? Why are there undead in there? We start just asking those kind of questions, and we build out the dungeon from there. So go through it. So what is our idea kernel going to be here? I don't have anything in mind specifically, so I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a random kind of monster roll. Let's go with a monster. That's a nice, easy one to put things around. We'll do that. Well, okay. So I rolled a 19. I think 19 is going to be the same. I should roll the d6 first. I'll just equally weight this. 34. If you've never seen me do this, you can watch the solo RPG stuff that I've done. You can see me. I'm just trying to figure out a random monster. The d6 is telling me what type of, whether it's going to be an artificial monster, a natural monster, or a weird monster, and that's just categorizing the categories of monsters. So we rolled right in the middle, so it's going to be some sort of natural beastie. What's at the high end of natural beasties? I am just going to go to Couple Fight Club. Why not? Just so I can see all the monster types. What's at the end of... it'd be plant. Okay, plants are interesting. Maybe we won't go with this. Let's get this an interesting plant, though. A shambling mound is a classic monster. But I did kind of want to do... I had in my mind to do kind of an urban adventure. It was kind of in my mind. So now I need something that would maybe make sense as a plant monster that's in an urban, because I was thinking maybe doing like a urban crawl kind of thing. Maybe we'll go with this myconids, maybe? Like mushroom people that have infested maybe like a sewers. Let's figure out. I want to figure out the size of what I'm dealing with. Okay, no, it's gonna be like a tiny hamlet. So probably not a sewer system. I've written myself into a bit of a corner already. Again, this is why the kernel's so strong, is because sometimes for me I'm like, I don't really have a kernel. How do I get the kernel? I didn't really have anything specifically. So maybe we'll welch on this. We're gonna go with the urban environment, because I did want to do that, because I'm not doing anything urban right now in my campaign, because I didn't want to do anything that's too similar to what I'm actually prepping for my campaign right now. So I can keep those ideas separate when I'm working on here. So I want to go with something urban. I'm just gonna use I got a nice little oracle table in here. Well, I'm supposed to have one in here. What have I done with it? What did I do with it? Oh, there it is. It's right here. Thank you. So, a couple D1 hundos. Alright, 43 and 13. 43 would be the liver. And 13... liver conflict. So maybe we deliver something through a conflict. That makes sense. Oh, so, alright, if we're doing an urban adventure, there's some sort of conflict in there. What are we thinking? Do we think it maybe like siege? Siege, city siege, or city attack? I'll just ask the oracle. Yeah? Is that what we're thinking? Yeah, okay. Deliver somebody. That sounds like maybe we need to actually get somebody out of the city. I like that. Yeah. Alright, so we need to deliver somebody out of the city. Alright, so now we're going to have here. Alright, so we've got our sort of kernel here. Alright. Deliver a VIP out of a city under attack. Cool. Classic adventure. It's a cool adventure. It doesn't come up. You don't see that specific kind of thing in D&D too often. It does happen. Of course, in recent memory, the idea of that really pulls me back to sort of Chroma Enclave stuff with the first campaign of Critical Role. And when I'm thinking about, oh, and he gets attacked and then they gotta get out of the city. That's the one that's kind of the most recent actual play example I can think. Oh, that's not true. I've been listening to NADPOD, and NADPOD has actually multiple sessions to that, but Brian Murphy's a pretty good dungeon master, so that shouldn't surprise me. All right, so we're gonna deliver a VIP out of a city that's under attack. So it's a bit of an escort quest. That's fine. So that kind of gives us our kernel, so we have an idea. Okay, so do we want to have like maybe one cool scene that we want to build that around? Be kind of cool scene. You don't necessarily need this. I'm just seeing if something jumps offhand to me. Maybe like a run through a warehouse. Yeah, maybe like running through a warehouse as it's falling down, as it gets hit with a catapult or something like that, and then starts falling down around them, and they have to hustle their way out of that. Yeah, I like that. So we're gonna deliver this VIP out of this thing. So really, that's just really our kernel is that scene, but that's fine. You don't have to be perfect with this. None of this stuff always has to be perfect. Just trying to get ideas down on paper. All right, so that was our kernel. We're gonna deliver a VIP out of the city under attack. Through a collapsing building. Hit by question mark? Because I like it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be catapult. It's just like, oh, I want the building collapsing that they're gonna have to run through. And depending on our VIP, maybe our VIP is not very good at running, so maybe somebody needs to carry them. Maybe they could be injured, right? If they need to hustle, somebody's gonna have to like carry them, or two people are gonna, do the classic under each arm, try to hobble them through as they try to run out of this collapsing building. Sounds like adventure to me. Oh boy, adventure. So that sounds good to me. I like that. So that's our kernel. Done. Ooh, motifs. I forgot to put all this kernel and motif stuff in here. So yep, that's fine. So 2 motifs that we want to use. The motifs are just something that are like improv helpers that kind of help us flesh stuff out. I use a dragon example here. A dragon motif doesn't necessarily mean there's a dragon in the adventure, but you're more likely to have dragon carvings, notes in draconic language, group finds a magic, dragon scale armor. If there's a random NPC I need, they're going to be a dragonborn. And it's just kind of this idea. It kind of gives you, it's a shorthand for improv. It's just a little improv helper, a little nugget to be like, okay, when something comes up and I need to pull something out of my booty real quick, I go, yeah, dragon something. How do I make it dragon something? Very, very hard to resist saying a dragon needs nuts jokes. But then I said it, so I guess I didn't resist. Anyways, so they're going to run through this collapsing building. We like that. We do want our motif. Usually 1 to 2. What's a good motif here? Yeah, let's go. We can go with collapsing. So, because we already have the collapsing building, I want that to be kind of a consistent theme. So there's always stuff that's kind of like falling down. Which will be a nice motif. Something that's collapsing. So if I had to do that, it's like, oh, what is this painting of? If I need to know a random painting, it'd be like, oh, it seems like these people who are pulling down a statue of a tyrant overlord or something like that. Very almost nationalistic kind of painting. And it makes it very easy. So collapsing's a good one. Do we want to do a different one? I'm thinking maybe like a monstery one. Maybe we'll use that plant theme from earlier. So what we got in the plants here? Thorny. We could just go with plants. Actually, that's a good motif. We'll just go. Or how about this vines? Let's go with vines specifically. Like that. So collapsing and vines. We can go back to that painting about the tyrant, the overlord statue they're pulling down. They're using vines to pull it down instead of ropes, and be like, oh, that's interesting. Why is that? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out as we play through. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we just go, well, it's in a jungle. Maybe that's the motif we could go with. And again, we don't have to use the motifs. They're there to help us, not to necessarily to drag us to a foregone conclusion. All right, so we need our start. That's sort of like the inciting incident, your call to adventure, all this stuff. Here's a super helpful thing for you dungeon adventure makers out there, is actually think about the start of the adventure. Maybe that's the last thing you do. It's kind of like when you ever had the advice when you were in English class or whatever, writing, and they tell you, oh, well, you write all the main body of whatever you're going to talk about, do all that, and then do the conclusion once you that summarizes everything you've talked about. And then once you do that, then go back and write the introduction now that you know everything that you talked about, so you know the key points that you want to introduce in that actual introduction. Same thing when you make a dungeon or an adventure in D&D. You can leave that inciting incident, the call to adventure, the NPC patron. You can leave all that stuff to the very end once you focus in on that kernel, that thing that you want to do, and start building out from that. So that if you do that, if presumably that thing's somewhere towards the middle of your adventure, so that way as you build out, you'll naturally get to the start and finish points, which should be kind of the furthest away. Usually, not always. Like, we could start off the adventure, boom, this building's collapsing, and you need to run out of it. That's a hot start. And not a bad start, but a hot start. You can even do in medias res if you wanted to, where they're escaping the collapse in building, and then as they get out of the building, then you do a short jump back and be like, here's what the last hours kind of looked like up to this point. As you talk about, like, the attack hitting the city and all that stuff. So, depending on how you want to frame it, but that's more of a narrative flair than putting out the nuts and bolts of the adventure, which is what we're interested in right now. So we're going to leave the start for right now. We're going to go to our numeral hex nodes. We're going to roll with the 1d6. These are just the rules written out. But we'll go ahead and do this. So we're going to need a d6. We'll roll for our start. This will make sense, a lot of sense here in a second. All right, so I got a 3. Here, over here. There we go. All right, so I got a 3. So that means room 1. And I got a 3 again. All right, so how this works is that we're just determining the pathing of the dungeon. Well, this will all make sense here in a second. So this one exists. This one, however, does not exist. There you go. So the start immediately goes to room 1. Now as we do that, we'll go around. So from room 1, go up here. And you can pick them, you can choose them. I just like to roll for them naturally just to kind of see how things flush out. You roll that d6 again. Ba-ba. We'll roll that. And whenever we roll doubles, we just move on to the next node. Alright, so we rolled a 3. So we know that that's it's going to go to room 3. For sure. And room 4 for sure. We do. So 3 and 4. Okay, so then I rolled a double. Alright, so it does not go to room 2. Because we didn't roll that. So this guy is going to go away. But we do go to rooms 3 and 4. So that means that room 2 can't be connected to room 1. So it can only be connected to either room 4 or room 5. Go ahead and roll that. D6 here. Alright, so it's definitely going to room 5. And we rolled another double. So, it does not go to room 4. Perfect. Then we move on to room 3, which can go to room 6 or 4 at this point. Alright, it's definitely going to room 4 and room 6. Okay, so it's going to go to both. Those will exist. Room 4 can either go to 6, 7, or 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright. So room 4 is only going to go here. Does not connect to room 5. Alright, so as you can see, it kind of creates this interesting path. We've already got kind of a loop that's happening here, and a sort of spur that comes off by itself. Room 5 can only go to one place, so room 5 will go to that one place. I think that's usually... Is that how I wrote that out? Hopefully that's how I wrote it out. Oh, I forgot I wrote nulls in. We don't... Well, we can do a null. The null might mean that... And we got a null. The null means that this... obviously, room 5 is going to have to connect to the rest of the dungeon, or else room 2 won't connect to anything. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to put a little S. So now this is going to be a secret door. It's going to be some sort of secret passage or bound passage. Not necessarily like, oh, there's a, pulled candlestick in the fireplace swings in. It may just mean that there is an untraditional path that they could take if they spend some time looking around for it. Like maybe there's a secret alleyway that they could run down, etc. That takes us to room 6, which is going to have also a null result. Alright, got the null result. And got the other result. Okay, so this will... Gotta keep rolling, duh, until I get the double. Okay, so room 6 will be connected to the finish and room 7. And then room 7, is it going to connect to the finish or not? 1 through 3 is going to be null. It will. Okay. That's kind of our layout. That's how we're going to run through. So you can look, there's a pretty big, there's a little loop here. And then there's kind of a larger loop here. And a little loop here. So there's a lot of little loops that allow you to swing back and forth around through different things. Now, as being sort of getting out of the city, this might be during an attack. This is more like, obviously getting out of a city from being in a city would just be like pick a direction and run naturally. So this is more about, these are the encounters we run into because there's an attacking army and conflicts that are happening. So you're trying to avoid sort of those open hostilities, trying to keep this person safe. So this is just the circular kind of path, the circuitous path that you kind of have to run to get around sort of the primary conflicts that's happening with, there's 100 people fighting in the town square. You're trying to avoid. We have our nice little secret path. Alright, we got that. Boom. We knocked out our numeral hex nodes. You don't need to clean up the node math. Usually I would do that if I put that in there because usually I do this by hand first and then I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to actually clean it up and make it look nice. Now we need to populate our rooms. So things that kind of go into a room when I'm building one of these is a general description or location. You have the Winking Pig public house, the Goblin Camp's latrine, etc. A room DC, if you saw me talk about in ICRPG just a few weeks ago. One of the things that I love about ICRPG is the room DC, where every room just kind of has a static DC for whatever you're trying to do in there. Sometimes if you try to do something that seems like it should be harder, we move the DC up by 3. Feels like it should be easier, we move the DC down by 3. That's the ICRPG rules. You can kind of change those modifiers as you want or will. The idea is to keep things simple so that way you're not always having to come up with random DCs off the top of your head. You always just kind of zone in on one. Also means that there's going to be like areas or encounters that are really easy to do stuff in, and encounters and areas that things are just really hard to do stuff in, depending on whatever your DCs are. So we have that. So we have our general description or location, our room DC. We have the chamber exits or clues to other locations. If you're doing a non-dungeon, that's your pathways. This will be our ways when we're in there and be like, oh, well, you see that there's to the east you can run off. There's an alley that swirls down into further into the city. This way you can see there's a broad avenue. This way and over here you see maybe that there is a way up onto the rooftops, etc. Those can all be sort of our exits as well. 1 to 2 pieces of set dressing or flair. This is our dungeon dressing kind of stuff. This is our, we put in that flair. It's a little description. It's a little herbs and seasoning that we put on top. Just make things kind of fun. Keep things interesting as they're moving through spaces. Then we set our room contents. I like a 2d6 roll. That's a little bit, I use a 2d6 roll, which is a slight modification on like the Molde basic stocking for dungeons. It's very simple. I've got it outlined right here. You roll 2d6, and we'll just do, we got to do them for all the rooms anyway, so let's just do the rooms. Rather than me do an example, let's just do the thing. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but that's fine. So I got a 6 and a 3. So our room 1, and we'll just do this. So our hex 1 here. What did I get, a 6 and a 3? Is that what it said? Yeah. So I know there's going to be a creature with loot in it, and also a hot. That's hazard, obstacle, trick, or trap. So in here I put, okay, be a creature, some sort of creature encounter. Doesn't necessarily have to be a combat, usually a combat. Doesn't have to be a combat. We got a hot that's in there, and we got some loot. I'm sure we will roll doubles. If we don't roll doubles, I'll talk about what doubles are. But usually we end up rolling some duplicates, at least. 2 and a 6. Alright, what is our 2 and 6? 6 we already know, that's creature with loot. 2 is empty with loot. So yes, you can have empty rooms in here. So, it means we doubled up on loot. I just said that we'd probably come up with a duplicate. Duplicates means there's either more numerous or more significant results. So usually when I get a double up on loot, that means it's usually a magic item. Usually how I play that. Okay, so we got just the creature. And we've got a loot. X2. Again, that's probably going to be a magic item. I'd toss a magic item in that room. Room, or area 3 for our city crawl. 1 and 2, alright, that's going to be empty and empty with loot. So, if they go down this path, there's nothing much here, except there's a little bit of loot. If they stop to gather this loot, maybe that's when we do a wandering monster check. Like, okay, you guys are trying to exit the city, but if you want to stop here to gather up some loot, do a little looting, as you will, as the city under conflict, which, you know, maybe that changes your NPC's temperament towards you, for obvious reasons, because you are actively looting a city they live in. But, you know, we want to make sure it's like, it's there for the taking, but do you want to spend the time to get it? This will also depend on how valuable stuff is. Now, for something like this, I'll probably roll the loot randomly. So it could be valuable, but usually when I do that, I play a pretty low money game. So probably not going to be super... It's not going to be like 5,000 gold or something like that. It's probably not going to be that. So it might not be worth them looting. But there's always the chance it might. And there's always... Do you want to loot this or not? Like I said, I run a pretty low money game. So the idea of even a purse of just like 25 gold, is just like, maybe that's worth an extra turn. See if something comes up. I know, I gold starve my players because I'm a terrible, terrible GM. The bane of their existence. 6/6 doubled up. That's double creatures, double loot. So when we get something like a creature double up, we know that there's probably going to be a magic item here as well. When we get a creature double up, that either means that there's going to be a lot of creatures, as in sometimes up to 2 full encounters worth of creatures here. It's going to be a difficult encounter, for sure. It's going to be like almost towards the deadly scale. Or it's going to be one big, nasty creature. Or something, like I said, it doesn't always have to be combat. This could just be a very substantial thing. Maybe this is they see another VIP NPC who needs help in some sort of situation. Maybe that's one of the creatures. The other creature is whatever's attacking that person. It's like, you can stay here and help this person, but there's going to be some detriment to that. So something will become potentially more difficult if they do that down the line. Or maybe you lose favor with your current VIP. Or they decide to run on ahead, or who knows? You might just literally put them in danger. That could just be the downside, is that you're going to put them in danger because you're going to have to fight whatever these creatures are. All right, perfect, love it. We're gonna keep moving on. Get it in there. Put it in there. Get this hex filled. Doubles again. Usually there aren't quite this many doubles. That's okay. I think this is just hot, right? Alright, so we got to double up on the hots. No loot this time. Sorry, guys. Hypothetical players. I mean, I guess I could run this dungeon. The likelihood I will is pretty low. This is just for you guys' edification. You know what they say as a dungeon master is like, you always save it. You never know. Maybe I'll catch this. Maybe I'll save it for something else later. All right, so but that hot hazard obstacle trick or trap, there's going to be something. There's either going to be multiple of them. This is where we'll layer things. So it'll be like, okay, there could be that hazard, like we talked about that collapsing building. That's the thing that we want to do. Actually, that just makes sense. This is the collapsing building. This is our kernel. That's for sure our collapsing building. Kernick. Our Kernick. Love me a good Kernick of corn. Kernel. That's going to be our hazard obstacle trick or trap times 2, our super severe one. Okay, makes perfect sense. And then we got one more. Big money, no whammies. 3 and 1. So that's going to be a creature and empty. I don't need to look these up. I'm only showing these for you guys because I have these for sure memorized at this point. Been using this thing for many a year. I do like it. I think it's probably the best thing I've ever designed, which is, maybe not saying a lot, but I think it's the best thing I've ever designed is the 2d6 room contents, which in itself is something that I riffed off of something that has existed for a very long time and is considered to be quite good, which is the old BX style of chamber stocking. I liked it, but it just didn't quite work for me, so I just tweaked a little bit, changed things up a little bit to do this, make it this way, so I had a little bit more variety. All right, so what did we get? I got a 3 and a 1, right? Yes. Oh, sorry. So we know it's a hazard obstacle trick or trap. So we got another hot and empty. So just a little hot, not a big hot, just a little hot. All right. So as we can see, you'll notice the way that this is set up. That we talk about, we want to make sure that we kind of have the balanced encounters, right? We want some social RP stuff. We want to make sure we have some combat in there and some exploration. So what do we have here? We've got 3, so half of our encounters involve creatures. So one of these should probably be an RP thing. Maybe an RP thing that could turn into a fight, but maybe it doesn't start like that. I kind of like maybe this one. Maybe this is somebody who needs some help. And if you give them the help, they're going to give you the loot. We'll do that. We're going to do this. So this can be, we'll just put it in here. This could be like our social RP. This will probably be our 1. Sometimes I use that framework, if you guys have watched the channel a little bit before, where I find it useful when I'm building an adventure sentence to create a sentence which is like, this adventure is mostly X, some Y, and a little Z. And I just choose different pillars and pop them into that sentence in those variable positions. So I think this one, based off of what we got, seems like it's going to be primarily exploration, because there's going to be a lot of running around. We have 3 different rooms with sort of the hazard obstacles, tricks, and traps in it, those hots. So I think it's going to be mainly that. We're going to have some combat. So these other 2 creatures are definitely going to be plus our exploration. It's going to be our combat. This was already an exploration, obviously. And this is obviously an exploration. That kind of gives us an idea of what we're looking at. Excellent. Did I get everything? Yeah. No, except for this. So this is a good room. So this is, since we have just a basic room, I think this could be an monster check. Opportunity for a short rest. Sometimes it's really, really nice when you're building out an adventure to just be like, I'm just gonna, this looks like a good place would be like, this is the thing that I would promote as Dungeon Master when I'm running it, be like, if you guys we're looking for a place in this adventure to take something like a short rest, or need to do something, wanted to do something like a ritual spell, this would probably be the best area in which to do that. This is the moment, this is that you are in the eye of the storm, you're in that brief calm, where you're gonna have a moment, because there's nothing in this area except loot. There's no native monsters, there's no collapse in buildings or other hazards or obstacles, so you just kind of have a moment to kind of, everybody runs around the corner and leans up against the wall and kind of catches their breath as they're running through the city. You guys look around, you see there's some gold coins strewn on the ground or whatever, that's your loot. You guys want to spend time picking stuff up and picking through the wreckage, trying to get some filthy lucre. Loot this place as it's going down in flames. And if you do, well, there's going to be a check. We'll roll to see if anybody comes wandering your way as you take this break. Especially if you're going to take that short rest, which, at least in D&D 5e 2024, again, is an hour. So you're going to be sitting here for a minute. I mean, technically you're going to be sitting there for an hour. But a minute in slaying. So that's our fill for that. Perfect. Great. We love it. We went a little ahead of ourselves. So we went down here. We got our room contents done. So we kind of started with the inn there. So let's go back and let's do our room DC. So I do a very simple I say a very simple. This is going to look like gobbledygook to you. That's fine. Don't worry about it too much. Don't think too hard about this. And again, I have the video where I talk about some of my favorite tables, 2d6 tables. If you want to watch that video back on the channel, I talk about how I make DCs, because it's not going to look right to you. All right, DC 11. Yes, I know the total is 6. Don't worry about it. So I'll just put these, I like to put these just right here at the top. All right, DC 12. DC 12. DC 15. Then we got 2 more. 13. And 14. Now, what I could do is I might go ahead and do one for the start and finish, just for funsies. Just in case I need them. Usually don't have to do that. 15. Oh, hi. And another 15. Okay, 2 15s. So it's nice at the start because, like, if there's a patron you're talking to, or you need to convince somebody right offhand, or want to do some sort of negotiations, then I have the DC ready for me. Same thing for sort of the finish. All right. So we knocked that out. We need our room, or we did our room DC. Let's go ahead and do our general descriptions or locations. That's the one where I was like, I'm gonna get the tables out that I use, that I spread across 2 pages in my handout, because I am not good at this. So this is when I just have a 1d20 dungeon chamber type table. It's super generic. It's very similar to the one that's in the back of the DMG, or at least the 2014 DMG. Not quite the same. I did change it up some. I do have a more in-depth one, but this is the nice, quick, fast one that I've used probably more often. We'll just fun. This is kind of a yeah, it's more intense music than I wanted, but fine. All right, so 16. Security point. Excellent. We'll go ahead and roll the next one too. So we got a security point and me hitting the mic and a private suite. Okay. So we're going to extrapolate a little bit off of this. So we'll just put it in here. Security point. It makes sense. Our hex number 2, they say private suite. I'm thinking that hex 2 will probably be some sort of private residence that we're going to run through. That's how I'll extrapolate that out. 13 and 14, which I believe is another private suite. And a recreation area. Alright, so we're gonna be running through some houses. Or townhouses. In the city. And our recreation area could have a cool thing where we're running across like an arena. Or like an amphitheater or something like that. That'd be fun. Because originally I was going to go, oh, well, obviously that's going to be like a park or something like that. But I was like, no. It could be a hedge maze. That would be fun. They end up running through a hedge maze. But I would let them do, if they're running through the hedge maze, if that was the recreation area. And I can always switch some of these around. I'm just kind of going down the list. So don't feel like when you're doing these lists that you are ironclad. You can grab some stuff and start moving around. One of the things that sometimes I'll do is I'll roll all the types of dungeons or locations I want to use, and then I'll assign them to where they kind of make sense in the map. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. Depends on how much that consistency or verisimilitude thing itch at the back of my brain is going. Sometimes it's going on fire, and I got to do it. Sometimes it's like, whatever. We have 2 more. Well, technically we can do one for the start and finish too. 12 and 18. Nothing if not consistent. Okay, so 18 is bath, latrine, or medical area. It'd be fun to run through the latrines or something like that. That could be a sewer area if we wanted to do sewer, because we did say we were going to maybe do this in like an urban setting, so like a full city, which would have a sewer. So that makes sense to do like a sewer. And, what was 12? Oh, a magic area. Interesting. Alright, so this was a magic area. Oh, I think we got an idea of how this building's going to be collapsing, though. Maybe it's a... I was going to say Mage's Tower, but why would you run into the Mage's Tower? I know. Maybe that's a problem for later me if I was building this out. Or I might swap it around, like I said. And you also have them running through the sewers if the sewer was collapsing. That'd be pretty cool, too. But I do like maybe just like a gigantic magical explosion. Maybe they get hit by some sort of like big caster and it's knocking the building down. You know, you get hit with the classic shatter or fireball or something, and that's what's causing the building to collapse. And then we said sewers. Yeah, that makes sense for it. The sewers should be the true way to get out, because they finally drop in and they go through the flume, like the outflow, the effluence sort of the city. They go out that way. I like that. It feels good to me. Feels very good. Let's go ahead and do a start and ending area as well. Finish will be a little weird. We might not go with what we get, but again, if you have a good idea, just use the good idea. You don't need to roll on the tables first. If you have an idea, just go for it. 2 is an animal area. Interesting. And 10 is a food area. A food area on the outside. That makes me think a tavern. So that's where we're going to finish up. Maybe we'll finish up here at like a tavern. Maybe they need to meet somebody at the tavern outside. Maybe that's the meetup location. And the animal area makes perfect sense to me. If you have a VIP that you're trying to get to, and you're going to kick off this adventure where it's just kind of an escort quest, that first scene makes sense to me that this would be in the stable. That's the animal area. Maybe they're they're in the stable, they're like throwing the saddle on with the people, and we have the security point right next to it, so maybe we're inside like a keep itself and things are going really bad. We have to get out through that. We have to get through the security point. Maybe it's the keep has already been fully closed because the city's under attack, so nobody's getting out. And as this person's getting their stable, getting the things on their horses, or maybe that's just as they're breaking through. There's gotta be some reason they don't take the horse other than running through the city on a horse. Probably not gonna go super well. Or maybe I let them be on horses, I don't know. Certainly if they get into the sewers, they're gonna have to get rid of the horses. But some of these are going to be like, oh, well, yeah, if they go through houses and stuff like that, it makes sense that they'll have to dump off the horses. Just charging them down the street's probably not going to do well. Horses are loud on cobblestones and going to draw a bunch of attention. They're fast, but they also don't wind through alleys very well. And they certainly don't go through buildings very well. And considering probably if I was running this adventure, the likelihood that any, much less all the PCs have something like mounted combatant or probably even decent animal handling, or that these are war horses is going to, like, if you get in a fight while you're on the horse, things are probably going to go bad for you. And the horse, usually. In D&D, what's the first thing that happens? You kill the horses. Every single time. Alright, so we got most of what we need already. So we got our general description, our location, we've got our room DCs. These are a little bit, we can firm those up a little bit if we want to. We can do that now, or we can do that later. Let's kind of keep moving back, and then as things sort of consolidate, we'll back. Like we see, as I'm talking through it, like already those ideas start to percolate in my mind. I'm like, okay, we could do this. This could be this. This. That's what the tables are good for. Anytime that you're randomly rolling, is that you use the roll tables to kind of give you the inspiration to start to figure out how to knit stuff together into a cohesive adventure. Our chamber exits are clues to other locations. Great. So the start only goes to room 1, which makes sense if we're going to put this in a keep. So we might go, I'll just put like, instead of exits, because this is kind of a point crawl, urban point crawl, we go paths. So that's going to go to Hex 1. Or, yeah, I won't say Hex 1 right now, because I don't know what that security point's going to be. So we're going to do stables, and actually we'll firm it up. So the stables, we'll say Citadel stables. Do I want it to be like a full-on they are in the keep? Or maybe they're just in like an upper ward situation. Maybe that's where this VIP lives. Because I feel like if you're under attack in a city and you're already inside the most fortified place in the city, why would you not hang out there? Why would this person be trying to leave? When they're in already the most defensible part of the city, and probably the closest to the center of the city, which means it's particularly hard to probably get out. Not always. Keeps her in weird places. Sometimes they're just on a hill. So, so maybe not Citadel stables. Maybe it's like a manor house livery. Sure. Yeah, I like that. So it's the manor house. So it's at this person's actual home. The manor house livery. That's going to go right through the... yeah, we'll say gatehouse, even though that's kind of weird. Portcullis. That's what our security point is going to be. It's going to be the gatehouse. Or we'll just say manor house portcullis. We'll do it that way. That way, keeps things a little bit more consistent, and I don't accidentally get confused and think, like, why are they already at the gates of the city? We shouldn't be there. That would be the whole adventure. So we'll go with the manor house. So I'm thinking very old school manor house. So basically you build a house that's basically a big rectangle with an atrium sort of in the middle that's kind of the general courtyard. So it's its own little like proto mini kind of bailey. So there's a portcullis and there are big gates there in the front that have usually like a little guardhouse over it, and which is why I wanted to say gatehouse or hoarding or something that's over the top of it. I know I'm using very, very technical architectural terms for that. You don't need to know those. You play your game however you want. I just pull in this stuff because this is how my brain works. Alright, so it's Manor House Portcullis. Like it. Okay, where can we go from our Manor House Portcullis? So that's Hex 1. Hex 1 connects to rooms 3 and 4. So that's our private suite. So this is going to be probably one residence. this might be an area where we want a little bit more clarity as we're going through here. So, one of my favorite tables. That is not the right thing. Sorry. Grabbing for the wrong thing. One of my favorite tables that I have, maybe the best thing that I've made outside of that 2d6 table, is a D100 table. Which is a D100 NPCs. I've gone over this on the channel before. I don't need to pull up the full thing. I've got it right here in front of me. It's a D100 table of all types of different NPCs, primarily based off of their jobs. So it's really great here if I want to know who lives in these houses, or like what was the shop at the bottom, because it's like a townhouse situation. If you imagine everybody kind of lives like Bob's Burgers, where there's usually like a shop on the bottom, their business on the bottom, and then they live above it. And very different style than a lot of us live in the US. But very common in proto-cities. Or I guess just older cities. 34. Looking for the light. Catch the light. Light. A jeweler, gold, or silversmith. Excellent. I like that. Alright. Yeah, let's say silversmith. About that. Hosua. House. And then we'll roll one more time. I know I just dropped the stupid thing. Now I gotta pick it back up. 17. Wow, low numbers on those D1 hundos. That's alright though. 100 NPCs. Number 17. A busker, performer, player, or punch and Judy puppeteer. Sometimes the results don't make sense. Now the fun thing, the thing that I accidentally did a little bit of brilliance here, is that next to that on the following page I have one D100 NPCs. On the following page I have a D100 shops and market stalls. So if I ever roll and need an NPC and the result doesn't work, rather than re-rolling, I can just go look at the other table. So this would be a bulletin board. Sometimes that too does not work. In that case, sometimes we just flip the numbers. So we'll just do 71. Ooh, a clergy member. A temple priest, a bishop, a cardinal, an inquisitor, or a vicar. What do we have on our other table, just in case? Let's get the full suite of options. Perfumes or cosmetics. I've done a lot of perfume stuff in my campaign recently, so I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use the other one. Which I forgot to put that down. Ooh, what was it? 171. That's what happens. Sometimes you just about too many things at one time. Can't keep it all straight. And keep your head screwed on straight. Assuming it was ever straight to begin with. Alright, the vicar. Alright. So this is supposed to be a private area, so we know it's not supposed to be like a temple. We could make it a shrine, which could be interesting, like a little secluded urban shrine. But I do like going with this is like the vicar's home. It could be like a chapel though. That would be fun. Just like another estate chapel. Or like a chantry. Do I want to do that? Do I want to do like a chantry? Because there's really, if we're just talking about a person's home, there's not really going to be a ton of difference between like a vicar's home and just a normal other town person. With the silversmith, we know what the like shop is on the bottom. Yeah, let's say I guess let's say a chantry. No, I'm trying to look for reasons not to do the shrine. Let's just do a shrine. We'll just go. We're just gonna have this be like a small shrine. And I'm thinking like I said, the image that always flows to my mind when I think about urban shrines makes me think of things like in contemporary Japan right now. Where it's like, oh, you have just a city, and then like, boom, hey, there's a shrine in the middle of here, or a temple in the middle of nowhere. Very traditional. I want shrine because I don't want it to be like a big like cathedral or anything like that, or even really just like a distinct church. I just want it to be like a building where this person also lives. So small shrine and priest residence. So that gives us an idea. All right, so our room connects to rooms 3 and 4. That's why we need to know that. So we're going to do our paths down here. We're going to have a small shrine. And we'll have the silversmith drop in townhouse. Has different ways to sort of break through. Nice thing is we did this city that's under attack, so that means that we can always be like, oh, there's always a ton of like debris that's in the road or barricades or stuff like that that you can't just run down the street. So it's like you have to like push your way through buildings, get behind stuff, and run through alleyways and stuff like that. So it makes sense why we're kind of doing this kind of running through buildings kind of aspect. What we might run into as we do that. All right, we did our small shrine. We need a recreation area. We talked about that being an arena. I like sticking with the arena idea. I think that's fun. Maybe I could also do amphitheater. I think running down the amphitheater, sort of reverse Rocky Steps running, where you're trying to run as fast as you can down the amphitheater, open amphitheater, with who knows what's happening in there. We said there was creature 2 and loot 2. We knew this was going to be the combat. This is okay. So this is going to be a big nasty combat. So we can, yeah, when a big amphitheater, a combat in an amphitheater. Of course, there's a big combat in an amphitheater. You catch it? I spelled it ER. That means I'm not brute. Instead of RE. Actually, I don't know if that applies to amphitheater. I think it does. All right, and our next one, okay, was sewers. We already know all that. We needed to know what room 2. So room 2, its path only goes to room 5, right? Our magic area. Oh no, I've fucked it up already. Well, if we wanted it to be, because they might not go through our kernel if I leave it in, because I forgot that's where the secret is. Then that's a spur off on its own. So we could go back and change that. Otherwise, the other thing we can do, instead of reorganizing thing, is give them a reason to go there. What was in room 2 again? Okay, so room 2's got this. Oh yeah, so maybe our NPC is like, stop. We need to go get this other person first. Like, it's very important to me that we find this other person. I know where they are. We've got to get them before we go out. And then that's up to, does that person convince the party to stick their neck out and go down this, find a way to get to room 2 that gives us the reason to go through this area. So that will work. It will work. In the magic area, it's gonna be hot. Okay, I'm not worried about that. I still kind of want to do a collapsing warehouse. I'm just trying to figure out how the magic. Oh, we said the magic is maybe the destruction part of it, rather than what it actually is. We'll do that magic hitting and collapsing warehouse. Yeah, that's our collapsing building kernel, so we can actually take this away. Don't really need this anymore, because now we've got this. Perfect. And sewers is where we'll end it out, and then we do the tavern outside of town, probably by a few miles. This all looks good to me. So Hex 2 only goes to Hex 5. So this path only goes to the collapsing warehouse. Hex 3 goes to 4, 6, and I believe 1, right? There we go. Path. Now, in this adventure, there's probably no reason why they would ever go backwards. They could. So, 1, 4, 6, 6. So, so Manor House, Portcullis. No, that's not correct. I'm losing my mind. Right? Oh no, yeah, yes. Losing my mind, I swear. It also goes to rooms 4 and 6. 4 and 6, so the amphitheater and the classic warehouse. Sorry, and the sewers. I am losing my mind, I swear. Theater. Maybe I need more coffee. That might be the issue. Maybe I just need more coffee. Still trying to wake up. Too much asleep. Wake up. In the sewers. Going Swedish real quick. In the sewers. No, the sewers. Alright, so that tells us sort of which areas we can go to. And that's just a key for me, like when I'm running the location, be like, alright, you guys are run through this residence. You find an opportunity to pick up some offerings or some relics that's been left here. You want to stop and gather that money. Now it becomes, now there's a moral issue to it. It's like, are you going to rob this temple? Like, well, the looters are going to take the money anyways. Like, this place has maybe been abandoned. Like, the priest is not here. Or priestess or vicar or whoever it is not here. Like, they fled already. Or they're hiding. So it's like, you could take this. If you don't take it, the looters might just take it anyway. So there's maybe not a straightforward, good, right or wrong answer there. Like, okay, well, you're in there and you're taking a look at that and you guys make that decision. You know, behind you, the way you ran back in is back to the manor house. Probably not going to go that way. But just so you know, you can head back out that way you came in. Usually I would not tell them the way they came in. They know the way they came in. Like, okay, you got in there. You see that the streets peel off, and one way you see it, the road opens up and it disappears for a moment, and there's buildings far, far away, sort of open space, and then you see that the cobblestones falls away, and you realize that that is the public amphitheater. And then they might go, oh, well, it's nice big sight lines. Maybe that's a good way to run. And then you see in your other direction that there is a just slightly off flush manhole cover. An opportunity for you guys to drop down into the sewers if you want to go that route. Now, I would have to introduce, they need to introduce pretty quickly, probably by the time they get to either room 3 or 4. I'm going to have the NPC pipe up about needing to go to get the other person in room 2. Or Hex 2. Run back that way. Or else they might hop into the sewers and immediately go through the adventure. Look, it happens. Sometimes, like, there's the quickest route through here is you go 1, 3, 6, boom, you're done. You're out. Now, you probably won't do that. Likelihood that they will run just directly through it, and then you end up wasting all this prep. It can happen. Won't necessarily happen. But if we have our NPC pleading them that they need to go to room 2, the likelihood is that they will see the entire adventure dungeon. The entire adventure as all the encounters and scenes in it as they run through. Alright. So, our Hex 4. Need some paths. So our paths obviously go back to room 3, and we also go to room 7. Which I... What? 1, 2, 3. I forgot to do the 7th hex when I was outlining this. Why? I don't know. I'm a little dum-dum sometimes. Alright, well, we're gonna add that now. This is going to Hex 7. Hadoy me. Hadoy. So we'll go back and do those. Okay, so we know this is gonna go to 3 and 7. So obviously this will take us back to Scroll Shrine. And we could also go on to Hex 7, which we don't know what that is. I guess we could roll for that right now. What's our Hex 7? I'm not gonna do 13's another private residence, which actually makes sense for the city. But let's get another option just to see if there's anything more fun out there. Okay. Ooh, a crypt. Ooh, we could run them through a mausoleum or something like that. Yeah, let's do that. That seems fun. Or some catacombs. How about that? Do the catacombs. Yeah, I like that. All right, these are for sure catacombs. Cool. Which is cool, which means to get to the finish line, you either have to make your way out of the dungeon out of the city, either through the catacombs or the sewers, which makes perfect sense. That would be ways that we would try to get out of the city. Now, what's actually in the catacombs? 3 and 2. Okay, so 2 we know is empty with loot. 3 means there is a hot. So a hot and hot. Okay, so there's some sort of trick or trap hazard or something that's going on in the catacomb. Maybe the catacombs are also collapsing. We've already got one collapsing thing, so I try not to always do that. But it does make sense that the catacombs might be actually trapped. This might be a situation where it's a trap. And if we ever, one thing that's fun to do is that if you have a trap, and sometimes the trap doesn't make sense, like because of the age or the location. Doesn't make sense if everything's super decrepit. That doesn't really make sense. There's a trap that's intact. You can also be like there's a trap that is misbehaving and not acting the way it's supposed to fully, which in its own way then makes it a hazard or an obstacle, but also being a trap at the same time. You can kind of reframe them a little bit. So in the same way that dungeon denizens could take a natural hazard or obstacle and turn it into a trap. If they wanted to, trying to trap people into this naturally occurring bad thing, like a lava flume or lava river or like a chasm or something like that. That they try to push people into. Very, very easy way to turn what is basically a hazard into a trap for the bad guys when they're playing with the home field advantage. So we know that this was the catacombs. Perfect. I love it. Well, while we're here, let's go ahead and roll the DC for it. Already got our 6s up. 7, 2, 12. Alright, so 5 goes a couple places. It's the only way to get to 2. Is the hex number 2? The silversmith shop. Which makes sense that's why we've got our magic item there. There's some magic item that's at the silversmith shop. Maybe they're having it engraved. Or maybe, again, they might just want the person from there. Or I'll only give you the thing if you also take me with you. And 5 also goes to secret. Room 7. So there's a secret entrance to the catacombs. That makes a lot of sense. Secret entrance to the catacombs? Yeah. Oh, and it's in a collapsing warehouse. Yeah, it's a smuggler's tunnel. Of course. Yeah, there's a smuggler tunnel. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It's like after a while, the stuff just kind of makes itself. And you're just kind of along for the ride. You're just kind of figuring it out as you go. But yeah, so obviously there's a secret smuggler tunnel into the catacombs. Perfect. Again, sometimes you just gotta trust the system. I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with this secret door? That's a secret passage. That's a hard thing to do in an urban point crawl. What would it be? Usually I don't have to end up doing that. Usually everything connects together pretty well, but this time it's not. Glad it came up in an example for you guys, so that way you can see what it looks like when it comes up and how you can kind of twist it and turn it into something that makes sense even when you're not doing a dungeon. What does a secret room, what does a secret passage mean when you're doing an urban point crawl? Secret smuggler tunnels. Obviously. I would say entrance to catacombs. There we go. Actually, well, instead do trapdoor. I'll just do it this way. Yes. Trapdoor to the catacombs. Which it only comes to light because the building is collapsing around them that they're able to actually see the trapdoor. It makes me think very much like the Baldur's Gate 3, right? Baldur's Gate 3, there's a warehouse that has a trapdoor in it. I wasn't thinking about that, but there it is. Classic, right? It's a lean into the tropes. Sometimes you don't always have to use the tropes, but sometimes it's when the tropes show themselves and they're just strong like that, you just lean into it. You're like, of course there's a trapdoor for smugglers in the warehouse. Of course there is. Alright. Our paths here for Hex 6. This, and so we've got room 3, room 7, and finish. Alright, so, well, we'll start with the inn. We're going to do the tavern. Side city. It'll be our path outside the city. Room 7 is the catacombs. And what was room 3 again? X3. Of course, our small shrine. So as we can see, the small shrine is doing a lot of heavy lifting, as will the catacombs, actually. Catacombs will also take us there. We'll go ahead and do them, their paths, while I'm staring at it. So it goes back to X4, so the amphitheater. Yeah, so yeah, they're going through there's a big fight that's going to happen in the amphitheater, and be like, oh, guess what? If you go in the understory of the amphitheater, which usually it's an amphitheater, so they've got like the elevators and stuff, like a stage. You go on under the stage area and be like, oh, there's also this, just because of where it is, connects into the catacombs. Like maybe it's like boarded up and they have to like bust through the boards during this fight, or something like that. Maybe running through there. Yeah, looks great. Love it. So that connects to the amphitheater. This is room. Oh yeah, this is Hex 6, so it connects there. Wait, what? What? Oh, right. That's right, this morning I don't have it all together. Sometimes you get the fog on the brain. I got the fog on the brain this morning. Hey, you should look at the bottom of the map. That'll tell you everything you need to know. Again, this is a thing that just takes longer, I think, because I'm trying to explain it while I do it. Whereas, by now, if I was doing this by hand, I'd totally be done. I'd be much further along and probably have this pretty well fleshed out, and I would probably be choosing monsters at this point. So it does move pretty snappy once you're just doing it on your own. Where were we? We did paths for 6. We need paths for 7. So we did the amphitheater, the sewers. Because of course the sewers and the catacombs connect to each other. That only makes sense. And of course, tavern outside the city. I think that's everything, right? We got them all. We don't really need to put the paths and a lot of that information for the finish aspect. The adventure's gonna be done. All right. Yeah. Well, what am I forgetting? Did I do the GC? GCs. I got up on most of everything. All right. So we got our general descriptions, locations. We've got our exits or clues to other locations, how to get there. Like I said, this is where I throw in stuff like, oh, there's the trap door here, or there's this boarded up area in the understage area of the amphitheater that you know leads into the catacombs. Maybe there's like a full like ossuary, so you've got like the skulls around the edge of the doorway and stuff, and it'd be like, oh, if we bust through these boards that are covering over this entrance, it'll get us into the catacombs so we can escape the amphitheater and the big fight that's happening. Yeah. We did our room DCs. We need a little bit of set dressing and flair. We've got our room contents for everything, and we've populated our paths. Or, sorry, we haven't populated our paths. Which we will do, and that'll give us our paths down here, and we'll finish those out. Very, very easily. And then we'll pretty much be done. Like, at that point, you could kind of... we can do the start and finish, and then the rest of it's just kind of like dropping monsters in and figuring out what the hazards are going to be. Some of those we already know, but figuring out like mechanically what that's going to look like. Because right now we've just made an adventure. You could take this adventure and not fill out any more of this if you want to keep it vague, and that way you could run this for any level of adventuring party. You just need to flesh out the back end of it once you start thinking about the hazards, obstacles, tricks, and traps that you're going to throw in there, the types of monsters you're going to be. Until you put that stuff down specifically, or even the loot specifically, you can basically take this framework and run it for any level party. You can make this a level 1 adventure. This could be a level 15 adventure. Just based off of the information we have here, that would work for either one of them. Now, obviously, once you get into higher level D&D, they'll be like, we just teleport the hell out of here. Be like, oh, well, yep. I guess that works. Unless you have some reason to stop them from teleporting. That might be something you'll need to do. Maybe a counter spell with a mage that shows up. A clutch check to do something like that. Okay. So, we need some dressing for our turkey sandwich. Or happy Canadian Thanksgiving, which was like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the time of recording, and our U.S. one's coming up here in about a month. So we're gonna need some good old dungeon dressing. Like I said, that's just our herbs and seasoning, the stuff that we throw in there, just some little things with this. It's one of the things that we use with those motifs for as well, to help us along the way. So I've got a nice little dungeon thing here. We've got a graveyard, necropolis, lost jungle city. These are encounter tables. There we go. So I've got some dungeon dressing. I have 2 tables actually in here. I have one that's my own table, which is 1D20 table, and then I've got this other table. I don't know why I'm showing you, like you can read it. I know you can. Which is the 100 pieces of minor and major dungeon dressing, which is actually from the Pathfinder Game Mastery book. But for the moment, I'm going to take a quick break, a little bio break, refill up on some coffee. Maybe that'll get my head screwed on straight, and we'll chug a lug, keep going forward, and we'll finish out this bad boy. And that's the plan. So hang tight. I will be back in a few minutes. So, bye. I have returned. Bearing gifts for me. Alright. Where were we? Dungeon dressing. So, yeah, like I said, I like to put 2 in there, usually. Not always. Sometimes 1 will do. Yeah, 1 or 2. Let's just go with 1. We'll make life easy on ourselves. How about that? We'll use, tell you what. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna make it easy. Why am I trying to recomplicate things? Stop doing that, me. 13. Alright, so 13, we're just gonna go down the list. Visibility, cover, darkness, fog, magical light, ready light source, weird shadows. We've got something that's dealing with visibility. So if we're going down here, so what's happening in the stables from visibility? Oh, you know, I hadn't considered that the city was under attack during night. But that would work really great. Yeah, maybe light's an issue, so maybe something blows the light out. What is? Well, let's go down. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. All right, so in the livery, that's just our start. Okay, so we know that. So if we just wanted to do like dressing. Well, we'll say lone lantern throws long shadows, those long flickering shadows. There we go. All right, give us a little atmosphere, give us a little mood. Doing it. We're doing it. I'm doing it. All right, so that was our dressing there. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. What's our wheat turkey dressing here? Well, again. Ooh, natural 20. Unfortunately, it's just for dungeon dressing. Fortunately, it's not something fun. It's just boring old dungeon dressing. That's okay, though. I like to see the 20 anyways. A statue, pillar, carving. Hero, a crone, a magic user, a noble, a villain, a monster, a maiden, lovers, a scoundrel, a beast, a god, or dead or undead. This is at the portcullis. What would make sense? I think we should lean in to kind of tropies here. I'm thinking like archetypical or archetypal statuary that would be like outside a fancy house. I'm thinking lions, right? Some lions there, yeah. Some statues of lions. They kind of flank the doorway, yeah. This is a situation where it's like, maybe we get one more. Get one more. Let's roll one more if we get something fun. Sometimes, which is fun with the dungeon dressing, is roll twice and take the best, or put them together, which we'll do, I guess, going forward. Elaborate ornamentation, yeah. And this is where we'd use one of those motifs. We're like, okay, what would the decoration be? We're going to lean into the motifs. That's why we put them here. Probably not collapsing, but we'll put the vine. So there's like this heavy vine motif. Around here, flanking entrance. Heavy vine. Please stonework. Or no, can I keep it all in one line? Ornamentation, we sure can. Alright, so yeah, it would be like, okay, there's the portcullis, it's got these lion statues that are flanking the entrance, and this heavy vine stonework ornamentation that's all over it. Why? Yeah, you know, just to kind of keep things interesting. And I liked it because, like, this is, like, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of things, and then things are going to be a lot more sort of destroyed as we kind of go through here. And as we go through that and get these more destroyed areas, we'll see some of this other dungeon dressing start to pull in a different direction. Let's go with these guys. We're going to throw 17. All right, well, we just got 17. And we've already had 13. So elaborate ornamentation and our visibility. I like visibility, but let's see something else. 12 and 1. So 1 is a passage, or like a passage, not like a passageway, but passage as in there's some clue or evidence of something passing. Blood, fur, footprints, scratches, drag marks, gouges, impact damage, disturbed dust, the old feces and or twine, etc. And number 12 is a hiding spot. It could be an ambush. There's some place that somebody stuffed a corpse into. There's an empty hidey hole, like there's somebody have put money in this thing and has ripped it out and run away with the money. They've reached for their hidey hole and gotten their money out of it. They were saving for a rainy day, and that rainy day was an attack on the city. It could be an NPC that is hiding. I like these. I like this passage. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, let's go with that. This is for what? Where are we at here? We're at the silversmith shop. We're gonna do dressing down here. Of course, this is where our good loot is at. Of course, this is where our good loot is at. So we're dressing is going to be the yeah, because maybe this NPC. Well, this is supposed to be a social art PC. Well, this would give me a way for them to be able to get the stuff just in case they do. The talks go sideways and people get stabbed, and NPCs die before they can tell you stuff. So we'll do the dressing. Yeah, so this is going to be a secret little hidey hole. So we'll see. We'll see. Marks on the floor. Where? I don't want to do it on the floor. Where would the hidey hole? We'll do scuff marks. Marks. I was going to do a long wall. Yeah, scuff marks along wall. Wainscoting can be pulled back for hidey hole. Loot hidey hole. Yeah, so there's some wainscoting that's on the wall, and be like, oh, they can get in there and they can see that, oh, there's a part where like boards are loose and they can pry those boards off and they see, oh, there's a little hole in there, and that's where these valuables are. Oh, we got something fun in there in the silversmith shop where they've got a little hidey spot. So that way, if they succeed in the conversation with the NPC, the NPC's like, I'll give it to you, but I'll only give it to you if you help me get out of here, or whatever the stakes we want to make for that. Which I might not decide beforehand, or I might, who knows. I'm not going to fully develop all these encounters, because that's not what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to set up the framework. So, but if that was the idea, it's like, if they convince this person, the silversmith, and they were able to get to them, the silversmith could be like, all right, I agree, we're all agreed. You'll get me out of the city? Great, you can have my treasure. And you see them turn around and grab the wainscoting, peel off one of the boards, and there's a hole in there, and they stick in there, and they pull out a small box that's got whatever this treasure is that's in there, that we know is going to be in this loot *2. So we, again, usually a magic item, but this is the silversmith. We could just make it a lot of money. Or a box full of jewels and gemstones or something. Yeah. You know, they're little rainy day fund. And that's why we do the dressing, because it gives us cool ideas like that. And then that way, if things go sideways and they end up stabbing the silversmith, or they get into a disagreement, or they scare the silversmith off and they run away, they can still with a perception check or investigation check, potentially see the scuff marks along the wall and be able to figure out that they can peel off these boards of wainscoting as well, and be able to get the stuff that's back in there. Perfect. Love it. Our small shrine and priest residence, which again is sort of like our place where we can just kind of catch our breath. So this is a cool spot that allows them to sit here. They can take a rest if they want. They can try to take the money offerings that are here, or whatever this loot is, if they want to do that. But let's get some dungeon dressing for this shrine. 1 is again passage. 5 is slippery, damaging, difficult, or impassable pathing. So maybe part of it's already been fallen apart. Where does it connect to again? Amphitheater, the sewers. Has part of the building already collapsed into the sewers? Maybe this shrine is kind of bombed out a little bit already. I like it. Don't love it. You know what? Let's roll again. Let's see. That's a good backup. Let's see if I get something that's a little bit more something. Wow, another 1. Thank goodness I'm not rolling for attacks. Saves. So passage marks the passage. Algae, cobwebs, lichen, mold, moss, slime. Yeah, I think we'll stick with what we have. We'll do that. Yeah, and that goes with our motif, so we'll lean into that. Let's say partially collapse. Partially collapsed into sewers. And what was the thing? That's sort of our. No, well, it was block passage and slippery or damaging. You know, liquid slime. Hey Saints, how are you? Jumping in, doing this Hex adventure. Thanks for joining in. Good to see you. But yeah, I like that. Sometimes they're not all winners, right? Sometimes it's like, how much do I really want to focus on it? Not everything has to be a bam, but yeah. Everyone loves that liquid slime. It tastes like green. Go on to the next guy. All right, so we got a 14 and a 10 here on my dungeon dressing list. Some sort of wild magic or latent spell effect. Interesting. 10. Acid, bleached, broken, exploded, jammed, melted, pilfered, removed, repaired, sabotaged, tripped. Something. Something of those. Does any of that make sense for our amphitheater? I think maybe some broken or exploded stuff makes a lot of sense. We know that part of this goes into the catacombs as well. And what was the other thing I rolled? Oh, 14. Wild magic! I don't think I want to do latent spell effect here. I mean, unless that's the way that you get into the catacombs, maybe? That could be interesting. Like it was illusory, covered over. Concealed in that way. Or it could just have it be exploded or broken. It also has repaired in there. I think I'm just gonna... There's no reason not to go with the boarded up catacomb, sort of like ossuary, bones and skulls doorway. I like that. I'm just gonna lean into that because I already had the good idea. I don't need to replace it with stuff if I've already got the idea. So we're gonna go with the idea I got. And that is for our amphitheater. So I'll say, yeah, we'll go with destroyed, like destroyed, like theater sets. Boarded up, skull and bone. catacombs doorway. I like that. We've got the destroyed theater set that there's going to be a bunch of fighting in. Thanks for the lunch entertainment. You're welcome. Thanks for hanging out. And Chris as well. How are you doing, Christopher? Well, I hope. With that lovely liquid slime. So we have the destroyed theater set, boarded up Skull and Bone Catacombs doorway. Yeah, they can drop into the catacombs from there. And I like it. I think this will go well. I like having, yeah, maybe the destroyed theater. Oh, we wanted the destroyed, well, instead of destroyed, we'll go with, lean into our motif. We'll go collapsing stage. Stage and set. There we go. Understage. Some bones kind of good. There we go. I fixed it for myself. I've done it. Doing a bit of final trimming for your own game tomorrow. Listening to streams helps get some ideas going. Yeah, I'm the same way. Get those good ideas going. This is, you know, I kind of just want to run this adventure now. This is generally what happens, is that I'll start working on one of these, just kind of farting around, and eventually once I get into it, I'm like, I kind of want to run this. This seems like it would be fun. And then I have to put it on a shelf and figure out when the heck I'd run it if I don't have, because I can't really throw it into my current campaign. They're not really in a big city, so this would have to stay on my shelf unless we were going to run a one-shot or something. I guess there's potential I could do that coming up, but that's neither here or there. All right, so our hex number 5. That's our collapsing warehouse that gets hit by either a shatter. What do we think, shatter or fireball? I'm partial to shatter just because fireball is the big flashy thing that always gets the attention, but shatter, especially against a building, seems really nice. So I guess I'll go shatter, because I have a good reason not to. Though having a cool like lightning blast through it would also be really cool. Just having a lightning blast that just rips the length of an entire warehouse would be pretty neat. And then immediately light basically everything in the warehouse on fire by doing that. Fire and smoke in addition to collapsing building might be a little much though. I might be making a death trap for the players. Don't necessarily want to do that. Okay, yeah. I've seen everybody's of the same mind. We'll go shattered. It seems like, yeah. Got to give some love to shatter, the shatter spell. Okay. Good golly, Miss Molly. Got to be in the right spot. So a shatter spell is hitting and collapsing the warehouse. We need some dressing. In that little dressing for our turkey room. Big money, no whammies. 9 and 6, almost a fun number. But you know, this is why we gotta have sex education, guys. This 96, it doesn't work very well. You guys are flipped around the wrong way. All right, so number 9 is a sensory foreshadow of a future danger. Maybe something about like the shatter spell before it goes off would be cool. That'd be neat. Some crackle in the air or something like that. Maybe like a bubble of silence before like a sonic boom kind of effect. I could see that as well. And number 6, vermin. Yeah, bugs, rodents, domestic animals, monsters. Yeah, obviously if there's the collapsing building, there's going to be rats running all over the place in this warehouse, as well as RPCs sticking over there. 96 is just a sad night. Yeah, I agree. I think shatter is somewhat more I mean, well, no, I take that back. I can't agree that shatter is more cinematic. I think a fireball hitting the building is probably the most cinematic thing. Big fire, big action movie style. But because shatter is kind of a spell that doesn't have a visual effect until it hits. But the spell itself going off isn't really an effect. Except, I mean, it makes a loud sound, right? Not like thunder loud, but I mean, it makes a loud sound. Yeah, let's go with that. I like it. So we're gonna have our addressing. So we're gonna have a. I like this, maybe like this muting, maybe like turning the volume down on the world, like the silence of like you hear the world starts to get quieter and quieter, sensory. Or yeah, Shatter was silenced before. Exactly. That's where I'm going. Like muting down into it and being like, why did somebody turn down the volume on the world? And then boom, it hits and everything starts falling apart. You know, all the windows along the side shatter and bust out and stuff starts collapsing and rodents start running over everything and trying to get out of there. As you guys are running through, as the, you know, one end of the warehouse starts collapsing, chasing you as you run across it. Love it. Mute for spell hits, and rodents scurry everywhere. Maybe like the Star Wars seismic bombs in episode 2. Gosh. Episode 2 is probably the Star Wars movie I remember the least about that I've seen. So, unfortunately, that part's just not helpful to me. I remember almost nothing about that movie. But the piercing ring after con saves, otherwise perception at disadvantage. They're already going to be running. I could give them perception disadvantage, but it's not deafen because it's not. We already have spells that do deafen, which would be like a thunder type of spell, and Shatter doesn't do that. But I like the ideas. I don't want to make things too tough on them. Like I said, the same reason I don't want to like make the building being burning and smoke and all that stuff, because they'll just get dead in there. That's what will happen. Con saves versus tinnitus. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm gonna turn down the volume on the world to mute where the spell hits, and then boom, Shatter hits. Rodents scurry everywhere, and they've just got to hoof it through here. For disorienting effect, yeah. I like it. I want this to be more of like a fast-paced action scene, I think. It's going to be just a straightforward like skill challenge kind of thing where it's like, okay, you got to get from here to here. Every time that you fail, you're going to take a little bit of damage as debris falls on you as you're running through it and jumping over stuff, and maybe there's different checks to jump over crates and other things, and be like, oh, yeah, the perception check, because that's another thing about doing the disadvantage on perception checks, is that I do want them to actually be able to see the secret smuggler trapdoor to the catacombs, because they need to make sure that that's an option that they can get to. As something falls down and gets something falls down and knocks a crate over or whatever, and it reveals it to the players or the player characters as they're running through it. Because that's the path they have to go to, because they're coming from the silversmiths. So they have to see that. So then I shouldn't make it a check if they have to see it, obviously. So forget what I said. Never mind. Like a flashbang, yeah. Somewhat off topic, but what is your opinion on lingering injuries again? Well, I mean, I use them, so I use them. I like them. As something that kind of goes on and impacts, especially to deal with the sort of 5e 2024 up down combat, where there's no consequences for getting knocked down to 0. So that's usually when I do a lingering injury. Be like, oh, if you keep getting knocked down to 0, you have some sort of lingering effect from that, and taking a bad blow, essentially. A blow that's bad enough that would take you out of combat. So the classic example from the campaign I'm running is somebody in session 2 falling out of a tree 50 feet and breaking their femur. Being like, well, yeah, of course you're gonna break your femur. And then being slowed for a very, very, very long time. Slowed and have disadvantage on dex saves. And obviously anything that's like acrobatics or dex checks. But yeah, so obviously I'm a fan. But I think it depends on what kind of style of game you're going for. So sometimes I do things a little bit more gritty, a little bit more down to earth. And so I think the lingering injuries fit with the style of game I'm running. But if I was running a high adventure, anything like something like this, if I was running this adventure, this would not be the one where I'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to throw lingering injuries in here, because I'd be like, the whole point of this is that they need to go fast. And so anything that would slow them down, there's not really any time for it. And I don't want to accidentally make like a failure spiral for the adventure by doing that. If I set them up for an opportunity to fail right at the beginning, that will just make them fail more and more and more as they go through the adventure. To the point where either they get out the adventure on the other end feeling like they didn't really earn that adventure, like they just kind of got given the adventure, pushed through it. Or they don't make it through the adventure and now they're stuck in a city that's under attack. Which means bad things are probably going to happen to them. And that's where I would cut the session and be like, alright, well, we're going to pick this up next time once I figure out what the heck's going to go on. Alright, let's do our dressings for our sewer. I wonder if we'll get mildew. We get mildew. I take it I don't use the ones from the 2014 DMG, the like lose a foot or leg. Seems a bit rough. Yeah, usually I keep it in pretty moderate severity, but sometimes it's like there's always a chance that because I use a body type die. It's a D12 that has like different. You roll it and it tells you a different body part. It's supposed to be like a hit die, like where you take damage at, but I use it for the lingering injuries. So it's like, so if you had already had, let's say, one head injury, and be like, okay, you're already concussed or something like that, and then you took another head injury, it's like, okay, well now something more serious happens to your head. At that point, I might be like, oh, well, you maybe lose an eye at this point. Or at least get some teeth knocked out, or a jaw broken or something. Then it's going to be really bad. And it does reduce the Looney Tunes shenanigans. You would hope. You would hope. I guess, to be fair, that player has not tried to jump out of any more 50-foot tall trees. So I guess in that way it's worked. Actually, I don't think it was 50 feet. I think it was 20 feet up. I think is where he fell from. I think. If I remember correctly. I rolled a 15 and 17. 15 is odor. Well, we know the sewers are going to have a distinct odor. For sure. Under here we have chemical, filth, rot, poison, smoke, or stale. Be interesting. And number 17, elaborate ornamentation. Interesting to have elaborate ornamentation in the sewers. Could be interesting though. Maybe it was a high-profile sewer. It was a high-profile public project or something like that. Or maybe this is something ornamentation doesn't mean that it was fit to purpose. It could be like, maybe this is graffiti or something. Now, there is an actual dungeon dressing I have in here for graffiti, but this doesn't mean that somebody didn't do that. So, yeah, I'm going to go with that. So, I'm going to go with the smell. How do I make the smell or odor somewhat different? I'm going to go with the smell of blood. Like, I think that all the blood from all the bloodshed in the city is starting to pool down into the sewers. And so now that you have that very distinctive iron smell of blood. So we're going to have the... as blood from conflict above. Seeps into the sewers. Just to give us a little something, little. Again, it's just our spice, our herbs and spices, our seasoning that we throw in here just for fun stuff. That's all the dressing is. So that's nice to keep them thinking about the sewer. And then what was the other thing I had? Odor. Oh, ornamentation, elaborate ornamentation. I'm going to say I want to do elaborate ornamentation. It's going to be like there's some graffiti, like graffiti murals of we were gonna go with that collapsing motif, the one that I talked about in the very, very beginning of the stream, where I was talking about, oh well, you know, the vines, using the vines or whatever to pull down, topple a statue, tyrant. And here, let me just roll. I'm just gonna roll a d6. Sometimes I'll do this. 1 through 3 is gonna be recent. 4 through 5 means it's gonna be old. If I roll a 6, it means like this thing is ancient. This is a very old thing. Okay, so recent. All right, so this is a more recent. We'll say recent graffiti mural of people toppling a status statue. Let's say tyrant statue. Give us a couple of words there. Yep. Bada bing, bada boom, got him. Yeah. Adding the escalation for the lingering injuries will be like, oh yeah. Well, now you take another head damage, and now it's worse. It's like, oh, you went from broken fingers to now it's like, now you lost, you know, part of your hand to, or you broke your arm. Or you know, have something else that's going on with a big laceration on it, like you're maybe going to bleed out. The other one is now a monster. Yeah. What is our last? So we have our 7 here. We can do dressing. We can also do dressing for our finish as well. What's our dressing looking like here? 8 and 15. 8 is an interaction with breaks, gives way, makes a loud noise, misbehaves. It's basically in the process of doing something, something happens with the thing. Like the floor falls out beneath you. That's technically not dungeon dressing, but it's like, oh, it's going to make a bunch of noise. Just try to do, like we just talked about, do a little bit of escalation. Especially if they're trying to be quiet. Creaky floorboards kind of thing. 15 was odor again. Alright, so these are for the catacombs. What do we want it to be? An interaction with breaks or gives way. Hey, you know, we could kick and scatter some bones across the floor. Kick bones, sending them scattering across the dusty floor. Yeah, we'll just say this: kick bones. Kicked bones scatter across. Across the dusty floor. Perfect. Nice. Very easy one. And then we wanted to do a smell. I could do smell. Smell is an easy one. It's definitely probably be dry and stale and bony kind of smell. That's not super interesting though. I think if I want to lean into doing the catacombs thing, I think we got to do a little. We got to Indiana Jones this, and we got to be like, ah, there's just a shitload of cobwebs, and they're gonna be thick cobwebs. But then we've got something that's obscuring sight. Maybe that works into our hazard obstacle, trick or trap that we're gonna throw in here. It keeps them from maybe seeing. Maybe there's a pit that they might accidentally walk into as they're trying to claw their way through these cobwebs. They might accidentally walk into it. If we wanted something very, very simple, or right, the kick bones, the scatter, and then nothing, and then a deeper scatter. If there's a big chasm or something that's there, they might come across. That's assuming it's a hazard or an obstacle. It could also be a trap or a trick. We did talk about this being a trap specifically, so yeah, I mean, that obviously a shitload of thick cobwebs would keep you from seeing the trap. And the kick bones maybe scatter across them, you know, classic pressure plate, whatever. Poison darts, scything blades, we'll do the Skyrim special where you have the gate with the barbs on it, the like sideways portcullis that whips around and slams you into the wall, punctures you. We can do that. Again, I'm not going to build this out to that degree, but that would be our next steps. It'd be like, okay, what is the specific stuff that's in here? Because until we do that, like I said previously, is that until we start putting like actual monsters down and start doing actual mechanics for the hazards and traps and all that stuff, is that I can basically take this framework and keep this and be like, well, whenever I need this adventure, I can pull it out and finish out the last, 10% of it, which is basically getting the monsters and loot and stuff like that. Because until I put those hard numbers down, I could basically run this adventure for a first level party or a 15th level party. Again, once we get into the higher level things, they will have access to magic that will make some of this a little redundant. Like again, they could figure out how to tree stride or teleport, or they just nope out of the city. So you're gonna have to, if I was gonna have to do that, I was gonna be like, there's got to be somebody who's keeping that from happening, or some reason why that's not happening. Try not to put a ton of roadblocks in there. Really try to cinch down on player and player character abilities and what they can and can't do, because that's kind of the whole fun point of power fantasy. But high level D&D gets real wobbly real quick. So what I might do is be like, if I was gonna do that, I might be like, there is like a very adept pursuing mage who's chasing them through the city. I feel like anytime that they start to send off a big spell, right, they get divined on, or they get picked up by this guy's radar, whom they might realize also has things like teleport. So it's like, if you run, they will follow. It makes me think of the Yennefer in the Witcher TV series, where she's running through all the portals, trying to get away from the assassin. That sort of situation. Be like, well, that's just what the chase is now. Is you trying to teleport away and this person chasing you down. Which is way more terrifying than just running through the city that's being attacked. Alright. We've got dressing left. Did we do all our dressing? No, we've got one left, right? One moment. Yeah, we didn't do it for the tavern. Let's do some dressing for the tavern. And our tavern is our finish line, essentially. Outside the city. And I'd come up with a name for the tavern if I wanted to. Or whatever. So let's do some dressing. This doesn't really make sense to use the dungeon dressing, so I'm going to use my D100 pieces of major and minor. I'll roll twice on here. One for major, one for minor. 20 and 11 low rolls on the D100s. A cane. And a brazier. Okay, not particularly interesting. These are things that I would expect to find in that tavern. Is probably a cane stand in the corner or something like that, or walking sticks and cloaks and stuff like that, as well as maybe a brazier. None of that's out of the ordinary. So maybe I lied. You know what I should do? I should use my urban one. That would be. I'm gonna. Let's do our urban dressing instead. This is more just like stuff that kind of comes up. So there's a reason I didn't use this, but we'll see why. 11 and 12. Usually I roll twice on here and take whichever one I like better. I rolled back to back. So 12 is the hue and cry is raised. So somebody's committed a crime or initially a crime, and common people are being called to action to find this person and restrain them. And basically, citizens arrest them. And 11 is 1d4 clergy giving alms and proselytizing. Oh, I like that better. Yeah. How many guys are here? 2. So they're priestly alamoders. Are they? Yeah, they've got to be giving out alms, right? Alms for the poor. Alms for the poor. 2 priestly almoners. To, let's say, refugees. Because obviously, if this is the tavern that's the closest to the city, which is the meeting spot that we're running to, that's our finish line for this little adventure. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of refugees there. And so you have the 2 priestly almoners who are out there trying to give out alms. They'd probably be giving out more than alms. We'll say food and blankets as well. We'll see. Jeez. And we'll even add our second here is that the bit of a anti-town starting to develop. Like people are starting to like put up tents and things like that around this tavern, so you see the refugees are starting to come together. And that's a nice little finish line for our people here, for our adventure here. Now, the thing that we didn't do is we kind of need to do the last little bit here. And as we do that, we'll probably finish up the stream. Thank you everybody for hanging out. So we'll go and clean up that node map. I'm not doing that. This is, again, what I would do. Oh, we didn't populate. That's what we didn't do. We didn't populate any paths. Let's do that. We don't have to do that. I don't always do it, but it is a fun thing to do. So in addition to, let me get down to our map. So in addition to rooms, our nodes having things in them, we can also sometimes put things along the path. As we put things along the path, there's an opportunity for them to run into things. We could do like a wandering monster roll and stuff like that. I'm actually not going to do that. You guys know how wandering monster roll, or I could roll 1d6 from the room contents if I wanted to. That would be empty, but there could be some minor loot they might stumble across But if they stop to pick up the loot, then you make the wandering monster roll. That's how you get them. That's how you get the players. The more you guys screw around, the more likely it is somebody's gonna try to get in a fight with you. Oh yeah, back to work. So yeah, I don't really need to go through and do that, but that would be the next step. If I was going to do that. I don't always do it. It kind of depends on how long I want the adventure to be. This adventure kind of gets the feels to me like this is probably, even though it's got a number of rooms in it, it's like I feel like we could probably pretty quickly play this because most of it's exploration stuff. There's not a ton of combat in it. There's just a little bit of combat in here. I think there's only 2 things of combat in here. We could potentially play this in one session. It'd be a thing is doing something like an escape or a chase or something like that is I want to keep the tempo really quick. Be like, hey, there's the pressure on it. There's the pressure cookers on, so you want to keep the cadence moving really quickly. So we could potentially do it in one night, but if I threw a bunch of stuff into those pathways, a bunch of optional stuff they could run into, that'll bog down the game. So in this particular circumstance, I might not put those in there. But it is nice to have some loot to toss there and be like, you guys can pick up that loot, but if you do, there is a chance that you can get into a fight. Now, this is also a thing where it's pacing control. It's pacing dial. So if I'm sitting here, usually the way when I'm running is I keep an eye on the clock. I try to most of the time. Be like, okay, there's about an hour left in this session, and they're on, let's say, room, I don't know, 5. And this is room 5. I'm like, well, they're gonna get room 2, and then it's basically a straight shot back because they already went through room 7 and 5, so we don't really need to replay all that. So they're gonna be running their way back. I might make some checks, just some wandering monster checks as they go back through areas they've already been through. But this is a good place where maybe I'd start introducing something like pathing. It's like, they got a full hour left, and this is just a social. Room 2 is just a social encounter. So it shouldn't take very long. I do want to fill up that time as much as I can. So I might throw a specific, rather than roll for it, I might just throw something in on one of these paths. Be like, oh, here's 3 other opportunities for you guys to maybe pick up some loot, to maybe run across another creature or NPC or monster, or the opportunity that you run across some sort of small hazard or obstacle you need to overcome. Get out. Especially, like, where I might throw this is between room 7 and finish. So once you make it out of the catacombs and be like, oh, well, there is, like, one final threat that's waiting for you once you actually get outside the city proper. Maybe there's a picket line or a patrol or something that's going to see you of the enemy combatants. Or maybe as you make your way out, you get hit with looters. Looters, bandits, or people, opportunists, criminals who are like, oh, I see, lots of people are flooding out of the city with all their wealth on their persons. Like, it's a great time to be a highwayman, and just, you find somebody and you just stick them up. And so that can be your sort of like ending fight. It's not necessarily a big fight, but it is like a little something just to play for a little bit of extra time so you can pad out that full session. Or if you're in the midway of the session and you're like, they're going a lot slower than I thought they were going to, but I need to make sure that there's enough content to fill up the next session too. That's when I might start throwing out stuff like these encounters along the path that they could run into. So it's very much a pacing dial. That way I'm matching the amount of content to the amount of time that I'm playing in, where I'm running the game. That's more of a sort of like intermediate veteran Dungeon Master, Game Master thing. Like, obviously, if you're a new Dungeon Master, you want to focus in specifically on this stuff and be like, make sure I have the basics, the nuts and bolts down, stat, everything's solid. And once you get that part solid, then you start thinking about, okay, now you start thinking about things of the game like pacing and time frames and making sure that everybody gets their spotlight and stuff like that. The other things are not once you have the fundamentals of just running the game, become second nature to you. And how do I elevate my game at that point? So we're not going to do that. It's a long way of me saying that. So for this specific instance, I'm not going to populate the paths. But in a lot of dungeons, I would. This is where you get the classic, like, oh, there's a trap in the hallway, or a collapsed hallway, or some wandering monster encounter, or check. So our finish, the climax and the denouement. So what is going to be our big thing that's going to happen at the tavern outside the city? Now, an attack would make sense, right? That there's one final attack. Maybe this is where part of the general's envoy, adventuring general is. Maybe they get to the tavern and they realize it's been taken over as the headquarters by the invading forces. How about that? So we do have the dressing there, but we do have taverns been turned into invaders. We'll say forward HQ. They get to this place. They've been going through the adventure and being like, okay, look, once we get to the tavern is the safest place. It's right outside of town. We get there, it's maybe a mile or two away. No problem. We'll get there. We'll be safe. We can figure out what to do once we get there, where we go from there. And so that's been the goal in their mind this entire adventure. And then they crest that hill. They cut through the trees or wherever they are, and you pick up the tavern. And just as they're getting close, they see, oh man, there are a bunch of the enemy soldiers here, or a bunch of monsters, goblins, hobgoblins, whatever they are, that we've thrown in here. They're like, oh no, they've taken over the tavern. They've turned it into sort of their forward HQ. And then we see maybe our priestly almoners outside, trying to give out those alms, food, and blankets to refugees. We might change that dressing a little bit. We might have our two priestly almoners instead being our... How about our chained up outside the tavern for giving out alms, food, and blankets to refugees? So instead, they've been found that it's like, oh, they were interfering. We'll say that. They were interfering with the operations here, so they've chained them up outside for now. They don't really want to kill them because, like, they're like priests, and that's probably not good for your immortal soul. So they're like, we just chained the guys up outside. We don't know what to do with them yet. But you might be able to talk to the almoners and figure out some extra stuff. You might figure out what's going on, how to get in there. Or it could just be a big fight. Or maybe you burn the tavern down with all the bad guys inside. I don't know what the party's going to do. Probably something ridiculous like that. So that gives us our big sort of Climax. Just down here. So that's sort of our climax. Our big final, like, oh no, there's one big bad thing that's left that we weren't expecting. And it also works as kind of our twist where the stakes get raised a little bit. Especially, we could come up with some reason. That's a good reason. Why do we have to go to the tavern? Maybe one of those elementers has something for us. How about that? Has some sort of... it's less dressing then, but... Priest has something the PCs/NPC need. Could be information, could be keys to something, could be... Maybe we just need one of the priests. Maybe it's one of the NPCs, like the NPC's brother or something like that. And so he's like, oh, well, if anything ever bad happened, we had this agreement that we would meet here at the tavern. At this tavern, if something bad ever happened in the city. You know, they had like a legit, like, exit plan. Like, hey, whenever there's a, like, they had an actual disaster plan. It was like, hey, if anything ever bad happens in the city, we'll meet at this place. My brother and me. And we run there, and the brother's tied up outside. And now it's like, oh, well, now we have to interact because we have to get that guy free. And that works for me. So we'll go up here, and we'll add that to our start. So now it's time to do our start. So we got our finish. We got sort of our climax of the denouement. They're going to see the effects of the PC success or failure. Whether that priest is going to live or die. And whether our VIP NPC... and if they failed a whole bunch, maybe there's not a lot of people who have made it out of the city either. Maybe they find a bunch of dead people. Not great. All right, so let's go down start. So when we're thinking about the start, we got to talk about our inciting incident and our call to adventure and our clear stakes. We'll do that real quick. We'll put this down here. So here's the thing, is that our inciting incident probably happens outside the manor house, unless they were already at the manor house for some reason. This, if I was running it one shot, I'd be like, oh, you had just finished the job for this person. Which is literally just going to be, yeah, inciting incident. We're gonna have a guy literally crawls in through their window, or busts in through their window. Through there, we're gonna say second story window. That's our inciting incident. We're gonna immediately get into the action. How do we do that? We're gonna be like, oh, the guy busts in through the second story window and attacks them. We'll say their rooms, second story window, and attacks. Easy. We're getting immediately into it. It's one guy. It's not really meant to be a fight. It's just to be like, oh, something's happening. Like now, it has to be addressed. Perhaps he has the hand of Vecna for the players. Could be. I come bearing gifts. That'll be our inciting incident. Immediately tells us our call to action. So we're gonna do what's our call to action here? Well, we said that this is already like sort of a previous patron. Say a previous adventure patron's home. Hear horses, let's say winning, and see a lone lantern in the stables. That'll be sort of our call to action. Like, what do we need to do? Actually, let's say where their previous adventures home. They're gonna see NPC running to the stables, lantern in hand, make it more actionable. That way, if they want to yell out to this person, be like, what's happening? And be like, we're under attack. I'm leaving now. Come with me. Please, help get me out of the city. Boom. Call to action. Done. And we have we moved in our dressing, right? We have that lone lantern that throws long flickering shadows. And they know they got to make it out through the front of this house. And that's where we have our lion statues, and there's going to be some sort of combat that's going to break out there. There's going to be a hazard. Probably part of the, like, hoarding or something that's going to fall. They're going to have to get over. Or it might just be the portcullis itself. Maybe they have to figure out... Maybe the house guard have sullied or... sundered. There we go. Sundered the, like, portcullis mechanism to, like, raise it up just to make it extra defensible. Or it's stuck, or there's a guy that's dead that's gotten stuck in the crank or something like that. Who knows? We can make up something. And so they have to figure out how to get that so they can open the portcullis. There's a little bit of combat that's happening as it seems like more of these people have put a ladder up against that back window and maybe are flooding into the manor house. So they're trying to get out the front. But the front's also maybe got some guys there too. And so we got some stuff going on. Very easy. Works for me. That's our call to action. We need the clear stakes. Well, I think a guy crawling in through your window trying to kill you gives you pretty clear stakes about what needs to happen. Our clear stakes should be... so our stakes here are going to be like... NPC... reach their brother. We're going to put in here priest. The roadside tavern. Slide down. And we'll just put it down here because if I was running it, I'd be like, why are they? How do they already have this set up? Oh, their disaster plan. Oh yeah, they already had this idea. I'd be like, oh, if anything ever happens in the city, we'll meet up outside of town. And we'll say safely reach their brother. Dear adventurers, help me. What happens if you fail? This guy probably dies. That's probably what happens. Especially if we're going with the idea that these are adventurers that have already done something for this patron. So this is not necessarily a new patron. It could be just like a person they're visiting. If you run D&D like I run D&D, which you probably don't, because I'm special and unique and more that I don't use. I try to use inns a little bit less, which means that I like to have my player characters figure out lodging, different types of lodging. So there is a likelihood, like in my specific game, that the player characters would just be staying at a dude's house in town. Literally happens all the time in my games. I'm like, oh, yep, well, you make friends with an NPC, and the NPC's like, well, you don't need to stay at the inn, you can just stay at my house, you weirdos. If there even is an inn, because I also, like I said, I'm very grounded. Most of my games are. So in my games that I run, usually inns only show up when they're at a pretty large settlement. Now, this is an urban point crawl, so obviously there would be multiple inns here. But there's got to be some reason why they're here already. I don't need to worry about that. If it's a one-shot, I don't need to worry about it. And if I was going to use this in a campaign, well, I'm not, but I could. That would come up pretty naturally in my campaign already. The type of campaigns that I run. Instead of guy, well, let's go with soldier. As more. We'll say more soldiers, they come over the walls. There we go. Yeah, I think that pretty much tells us exactly. Now, the only thing that we don't have in here, don't need to worry about the info from the patron or clues on how to get to the adventure location. You're there, buddy. You're already there. You're in the city where the thing's happening. don't have to go anywhere. So what happens if the PCs don't get involved? That's usually the clear stakes. That dude's gonna die. Who's definitely not making it out of this house unless you help him. Or her. I don't know who this patron is. Or them. Again, I don't know who this patron is. And then I'd probably need to also come up with some sort of, like, I guess. Players are always like this, probably want some sort of rewards. Ugh. Ugh. Can't just do things for people. You gotta get paid. And filthy, filthy lucre. I was trying to think about what do I do for that. You want to pull that out? No. It's like I could pull out my. Actually, have it with me. One moment. Oh, please. I may have it with me. Let me see if I have the table. And I should say out loud the things that I'm thinking about. That's helpful for streaming. I was trying to see, is like, I think I might have the rewards on here. Do I? Maybe I don't. Customatic, subject opportunity, seeing their actions. 1d20 patron rewards. There we go. Let's figure out what he's going to give them. Essentially. 1 in 20. Well, they I guess that's roughly average when you put those together. Forgiveness of a debt or transgression. This is already our friend, so probably not that one. I'll go with number 1. An oldie but a goodie. Hey bud, I'll owe you one. I'll owe you a favor. Having a powerful patron owe you a favor is worth more than gold itself. Which makes sense. This guy's literally fleeing. I'm just going to use the male pronouns because that's, for some reason, I'm seeing this patron as a man. So this guy is literally fleeing his own house. So it's like he's not going to be able to pay you much of anything because he doesn't have time to like go by the bank and get some cash out. He's like, no, I'm literally fleeing my home for my life. I don't know what I'll be able to pay you, but I will do a favor for you. I don't know what it's going to be, but we need to get the hell out of here, like, now. Again, put the urgency on him. So we can squibble and squabble about what we think your effort was worth once we're to the place where we can sit down and have a conversation like that, which is not right now. There we go. Yeah, so that was it. So that's pretty much an adventure. In what, less than 3 hours. Built a whole little adventure. This probably take 2 sessions, maybe 1 session if you really hoofing it. You probably get through this in 1 session, but likelihood is this would probably be 2 sessions worth of content. That's it. Now we do have a little extra stuff where we go in and we'd be like, okay, well I need to like put the mechanics of what the actual like collapsing building is going to be. I'll need some actual mechanics to write that stuff down. I'll need to pull some actual monster stat blocks and actually set up these fights. But as far as like the framework of the adventure itself, like the whole layout, the formatting of it, the understanding of the outline, essentially, which is what this is for, basically our outline of what this is going to be, we've done that. We did it. You and me, here together. So, there's not much more to say about it. That's really everything I wanted to show. Hopefully this was super useful for you guys, and you can see why this is one of my favorite frameworks. I didn't know what this adventure was going to be when we sat down to do this. I sat down and hit stream. But now I got a cool adventure that I kind of want to run, which is this escape of a nice city being destroyed. This is good. I look at something like this and I was like, this is a good campaign kickoff adventure, is what this screams at me. Like, I'll do a little pre-pro adventure, a little pre-adventure, which would be this first whatever do-nothing adventure would be, like a little 5-room dungeon or something for the patron. So it gives them a reason to be at the patron's home for the start of the actual kickoff of the campaign, which is going to be like this invasion and attack of the city. and running out of it, and this guy owing you a favor, which will set you off. But this guy's got to have something with which he can do a favor for you, whether that's money he needs to get his hands on, or he might be a noble, so maybe you need to help him gather up his vassals to bring the war back. Could be another thing. You might be like, oh, maybe this guy needs to continue to flee. Maybe this is like, oh, we're not safe yet. I actually need to flee the nation. Like, we need to get to a port town. I need to get on a ship. We need to get the heck out of here. And maybe it's the campaign, the first arc of the campaign is more of like a flight from home kind of thing. Could be fun. Set for, distant shores. Maybe they get into a shipwreck and land on the island or a different place they don't know anything about. If I wanted to do more of a hex crawl campaign, you could go a lot of different ways. They could literally just go to another big city and end up being like thugs in another city. We don't know. This is just, but it's a good adventure to like kick off that campaign, whatever that campaign's going to be. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I found this stuff helpful, and hopefully I was able to communicate to you why I love this Hex Dungeon adventure format so much. Why I really like this. I think it's super fun. It's super easy to go through. You get a really nice adventure out of it almost every single time you do it without a ton of work. And as you start getting into it and start assigning things and using your preferred roll tables to fill stuff out, those ideas just start to roll into each other very quickly. And it just, at least for me, it's very easy to put these ideas together and make it into a fully fledged adventure without a ton of work. Right, being able to prep what is essentially like a 2 to 3 session adventure in just a couple of hours, not bad. That's not a good return. That's a pretty good return on investment. Now, obviously, when the actual session comes up, I'll have to drop in the monsters and figure out what the loot is. But I mean, what's that going to take you? 15 minutes, maybe 10-15 minutes, and you only need to do it for whatever you think they're going to actually run into that session. So like, I probably wouldn't need to figure out like 2, for instance, like area 2, because the likelihood is that they will not. If they started here, they'd be 1 scene, 2 scene, 3 scene, 4 scene, 5 scene. Like the earliest they could get to room 2 would be the 6th scene. I kind of like the rule of thumb that's you get about a scene for every 45 minutes of play with 4 players. So that would be 6 times 0.75, which would tell me what that's like 4 hours, right? You trying to do math? I'm actually just gonna pull up there. No, that's not right. It's not. It's 4.5 hours. So I know that that's longer than my session, so I probably don't need to prep that aspect. Now, there's a chance they could run through the whole thing and get there, but unlikely. At some point, they will slow down. They will get stuck with something, and if they start moving towards one of those areas that I haven't prepped yet, then I start throwing down those random things that are along our pathways. Like, oh, now there's a random guard patrol you run into. There's some looters you run into, wild animals. You run past a zoo that's been attacked and all the wild animals are out, and now you actually have to fight lions and tigers and bears in the middle of this open avenue, broad avenue, because that's just a weird sort of situation you find yourself in this utter chaos that's going on. But yeah, that's everything that I wanted to cover with you guys. Hopefully you guys had fun. I always have fun with this stuff. Hopefully you got something out of it. So make sure you go try this out. Very simple. We'll just, right before we finish, we'll read out what the outlining is again and how you actually get this done. And then you can take it and use it yourself. We have this nice little format. That's our thing. We got the start, room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, room 5, room 6, room 7, finish. The little connectors in between. We roll to make those paths. We start off with our idea kernel, which is like, what is the one thing that's our spark of inspiration for it? I knew that I wanted to do kind of an urban crawl thing, and then our one thing that we had was like, oh, I wanted that collapsing warehouse. Alright, so then we'll just start building out a reason to be. How do I get my players into that, and their characters, into that collapsing warehouse? And we ended up with this adventure. That's how we get there. Like I said, we do the motifs. We got two simple ones. We had our collapsing motif and our vine motif, both of which came up. We extrapolated the motif of the collapse and the vines to go with that tyrant statue being pulled down, the graffiti that we saw in the sewers. What does that mean? I don't know. Do my players investigate that? Then we'll figure out what it means. But for right now, I don't need to know what that means. They might figure that out along the way. We start with the start, but honestly, we actually typically finish with the start. And do that last, once we figure everything out. And then we can swing back and be like, okay. Otherwise, we wouldn't know about the brother aspect from the priest. So it's like, why is the priest important there at the end? It's like, oh, well, that's going to be the NPC's, the major NPC's brother. Or lover, or whatever. Doesn't really matter. We just know that that's how we're going to button it up together. Have our inciting incident. You know, what's the kickstart into danger? Our call to adventure, what do we need to do? We need our clear stakes and our rewards. I'm going to owe you a big favor. What happens if the PCs don't get involved? Make sure that's clear so they understand the decision they're making if they choose not to get involved. Info from patron or clues on how to get to the adventure location. Hey, you're here, buddy. You're already in the city that's being attacked. Otherwise, we need to be able to get that to them. We path our numeral hex nodes with the D6. We did that live. We're not going to go over that again. You've already watched that. If you haven't watched that, I don't know why you jumped to this point. You're going to have to watch it again. But we did that. So that way we can set up loops and stuff like that. Again, this is a format I find useful for both dungeons and urban and wilderness point crawls, using these little node maps. And I usually just do them by hand, but I don't have a fancy tablet, so I can't just draw it for you guys on the screen, or else I'd do that. And you could read my chicken scratch to try to write. So we do our pathing, we clean up that node map, we populate the rooms with their descriptions or the location, what the DC is going to be for it, our general DC, our exits or paths to other areas, our set dressing or flair. It helps us sort of build things out and give us sort of that atmosphere and mood that we're going for. Our 2d6 room contents, doing that. Oh yeah. Thanks. I hope you enjoy the format too. It's fun. I find it so useful. And we fill that out. Again, this is kind of based off of the BX stocking rules. Slightly modified. And then we populate our paths if we're going to put stuff in the paths. May or may not. We can always choose to add things later or take things away later if we want to. Nothing set in stone. Then we need to do our finish, which is our big climax or denouement. So we knew at the end, here at the finish, they get through this. They make it out of the city. They clear straight. They get to the tavern. Boom. Tavern's being used as this forward HQ. Oh no. They've got the brother priest trained up outside. What are we gonna do? There's our nice sort of twist and escalation there at the end. They try to figure out, so they can't just walk away from it. The whole point. So they can't just walk away because the NPC needs to be there. The NPC needs to get their brother. And they got to do something about this forward HQ. Now, again, they may just burn the place down. PCs and players are insane. So they might just do that with everybody inside. Since I said the priest was locked up outside. They might just sneak in and try to get away with the guy. That's perfectly ending. It doesn't have to be a combat. It just needs to be kind of a high stakes situation. And if they're running away, maybe they get seen and be like, and now the guards gather and start chasing off after you, and we'll cut the session there. And then next time we'll pick up with you guys being chased through the countryside by this guard patrol, and you hear the whinnying of horses as people swing into saddles to chase you down, and you guys don't have horses, so what are you gonna do? Because they're definitely going to catch up to you. We go on from there. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Enjoy. And then the denouement, we didn't really do. That's where we showed the effects of the PC success or failure. Don't really know. This one's kind of weird because we don't know what the denouement's going to be, because I don't know what the next step would be for this campaign. Otherwise, maybe they get to the tavern, they clear out the tavern, and then I'd be like, oh, well, you see the refugees flowing in. That would be the sort of, and then you've seen the priests giving out aid as they can. And And that would be seeing the effects of the PC's success or failure in that aspect. But that's it. I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. This was fun. It always is. Try this out. If you do, drop down in the comments. Let me know how it goes. If you have a different type of method or template or something like this that you use to create adventures, share that as well. I have a few other ones I like to use, but this is by far my favorite and closest to my heart, probably because I made it, so I'm a little biased. Obviously, I'm going to be a little biased. But I always love to see new ones and love to mix it up and make sure that my own adventure stuff doesn't get stale. So share it down so that way I can take a look at it. And that's it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Alright, guys? Bye.